It is 10 o'clock on a Friday. It's sunny right now. Some bad weather expected later this afternoon. Hope everybody is having a good start to potentially your weekend. Pat Smith, Molly Robinson with you. Everybody's left us, Molly. Everybody's gone. Just me and you.
I know. It's so empty. I feel so empty.
It feels awesome to me.
Yeah. Kind of nice.
We will have...
I just miss everybody.
You don't say that when I'm gone.
Yeah, we do.
No, you don't. I'll listen.
I do.
Whatever. Landrum's at the beach. He's actually working. Now, Conrad is not working. He's just hanging out at the beach.
He has another bachelor party.
Yeah.
Or so we think.
Yeah, air quotes.
Air quotes.
Using that. So both of those fine young gentlemen will be back on the program coming up on Monday. In this program for the next 4 hours, hope you'll keep us tuned in. We'll try to inform and entertain you the best that we can here on Three Man Front. A little bit later in the show, Barrett Sallee will talk about the Atlanta Braves. The upsurge of the Braves started pretty slow at the beginning of this baseball season, but they have climbed themselves back into the race in the National League East. We will talk to Barrett Sallee. Skip Holtz, the head football coach of the Birmingham Stallions, he'll join us at 11:30 as they get ready for a Sunday afternoon game at Protective Stadium, 3 o'clock against the San Antonio Brahmas. And then from 12 to 2, Mike Rodak, outstanding writer for Bama 247. He will be in studio with us. We will talk Alabama football. We'll talk Alabama basketball, all things Alabama with Mike Rodak. So it'll be nice to catch up with him. I know you've got big plans for this weekend, right? You're heading back north?
I'm headed home, yeah. Not like north to Michigan, but about an hour north, hour and a half.
Yep, heading up to the Rocket City this weekend.
Visit some family. We have some friends coming into town too. So
if
friends from Michigan, actually.
So if you see Molly out and about in the Rocket City, say hello.
Yes, please. I don't bite.
You went to a Trash Pandas game over the weekend, I heard.
I did. It was the Trash Pandas and the Barons.
Did you throw out the first pitch?
I did not. They asked me to, but I politely declined.
But you sang the national anthem.
I did. It was great.
Wimp Sanderson will join us at the bottom of the hour at 10:30, as he customarily does. So he will join us coming up at the bottom of the hour. Big night in Tuscaloosa last evening, to say the very least, as we had Nick Saban and Donald Trump on the same stage on the same night in T-Town. This is what Nick Saban had to say in regards to telling the upcoming graduates at the University of Alabama about how important it is, the process.
I always tell people that you need to be very wise about the goals that you set. But more importantly, you got to define, what do I need to do to accomplish those goals? That's called the process. The very things that you need to do on a day-to-day basis to be able to accomplish the goals that you have. You need to define that for yourself. And then you have to have the discipline to execute it every day. And I'm talking about self-discipline, because we make hundreds of decisions every day that come down to two questions. Here's something I know I'm supposed to do that I really don't want to do. Can you make yourself do it? On this hand, there's something you know you're not supposed to do, but you want to do it. Can you keep yourself from it? If you can make those choices and decisions the right way, you'll be able to always make progress toward the goals and aspirations and things that you want to achieve.
That was Nick Saban. We have heard that process conversation before with Nick, and he was telling the graduates about that last night. He also told a funny story in regards to one of the numerous trips that the Alabama Crimson Tide football team has had going to the White House when you win a national championship. You're invited. Take a listen. Right before Coach Saban introduced President Trump, this is what he had to say. He told a funny story about being in the Oval Office.
And before I introduce President Trump, I have to tell you a story. You know, you all know that we win a national championship, we get to go to the White House, and it's a great experience for our players and each and every year. When we won in 2017, President Trump was there in 2018, very gracious host, and he's the first president that invited us to come in the Oval Office. So I take the three captains in the Oval Office, and the president's really nice to everybody, and he's got this very big, good-looking, auspicious box on his desk that has a red button on top. And one of the players said, "Is that what you launch the missiles with?" And he said, "Well, push it and find out." Player said, "No, I don't want to do that." He said, "Oh, go ahead, push it, see what happens, find out." So Rashawn Evans finally got the guts up, went over, pushed the red button. Some lady came in with a Coke on a tray. So I really want to express my appreciation to President Trump for choosing the University of Alabama for his commencement address and making time to speak to our graduates. Now it is my distinct honor to introduce our next speaker. Please join me in welcoming the 45th and 47th President of the United States, Donald J. Trump.
What a great story Nick Saban told. I've actually heard that story before. Many people believe that special box on President Trump's desk was maybe launching something towards Russia.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
But instead, it's you press the button, you get Cokes or Diet Cokes.
Would you press it?
Sure.
I think I'd be too scared to.
No, if he
like not knowing that's what it meant.
I would hope that the leader of the free world would not allow
Right. I think I'd still be too scared to.
anyone to touch the button. But so what a great story told there by Nick Saban. So Donald Trump, he came to the stage and he basically told the crowd that when he got the call, it did not take him long to accept the opportunity to come to T-Town.
This place is truly where legends are made. It really is. It's a special place. When your president called, we talked about it. It took me about 2 seconds to say, I'll go. I wasn't looking to do it, and we are busy. You know, we're winning a lot of battles right now. We love winning, don't we? Love winning. We're winning a lot of battles. But I wanted to do this.
There you go. Did not take him long. Once the president of the University of Alabama reached out to the White House, he said absolutely he would do it. One of the rousing ovations that President Trump did get last night was his comments about no men in women's sports.
And I love sports, and I think I should have come here. I think I should have come here. Congratulations as well to the women's track and field team for winning 2 SEC titles this year. That's something. As long as I'm president, we will always protect women's sports. Men will not play in women's sports. No way. They say that's an 80-20 issue. No, it's a 97-3 issue, I think. No, men will not be playing in women's sports. I said that, and I classified it with a very powerful executive order. As you know, it's done.
There you go. Big ovation when he had to say about men playing in women's sports. And as Trump wrapped up the night there, speaking at the commencement, he had a message for those graduates talking about the American success story, maybe not being written by an Ivy League school, but perhaps a member of the Southeastern Conference.
Graduates of the Alabama class of 2025 standing here before you in this magnificent arena, it is clear to see the next chapter of the American story will not be written by the Harvard Crimson. It will be written by you, the Crimson Tide. That's true. That's true.
That's how he pretty much ended the night. And then, of course, he did a little dance as Yay, Alabama was being played. Listen, you're a dancer your whole lifetime. How would you rate President Donald Trump's dance moves?
That's not bad. It's pretty simple.
Pretty simple?
Just a little fist pump, kind of. Not bad, though.
Saw him on the campaign trail to YMCA last night. He was doing it to Yay, Alabama. It's got the same move. Doesn't matter the.
I've seen Richard do this a lot, too. Over at Talk.
Do it again for YouTube.
The little dancey dance that he does. There it is.
Yeah, there you go. So good stuff. So if you were down in Tuscaloosa, we'd love to hear from you. 1-800-239-WJOX, the Courtesy GMC text line, 205-834-9450. Pretty special. No matter your political affiliation, if the president of the United States, the leader of the free world, comes to your university to give a commencement speech, that's a really big thing. I know that there were protests going on in Tuscaloosa, Birmingham, things of that nature. And once again, you have that right because that's your, granted rights to protest. And I know some people weren't very happy with him coming down. So But it seemed like it went off without a hitch last night, and a lot of happy people in Tuscaloosa seeing President Trump. Meanwhile, on the sports scene, we've got the Atlanta Braves tonight. They'll be back in action here on Jocks 94.5. That is a 6 o'clock pregame show. Barrett Salee, who will join us at 11 o'clock this morning, he will be on the pregame show. Will be Grant Holmes, 2-1, 4.50 ERA, goes up against Yoshi Yamamoto from the Los Angeles Dodgers. Yamamoto is 3-2, but he has a Major League Baseball best 1.06 earned run average. So that's who the Braves, that's who the Braves are going up against tonight. Atlanta currently 6 games back in the National League East. They're third place. But the good news, and we'll talk to Barrett about this next hour, the last 15 days for the Braves on the calendar, they have the 5th best batting average in Major League Baseball.
There we go.
So the bats are warming up. They're batting .279 over the course of the last 2 weeks. So we'll talk to Barrett about that. Also, later in the program, we will talk about the Birmingham Stallions. As I mentioned, San Antonio comes to town. The Stallions offensively has been sputtering as of late. They have a situation playing another team that is down in the standings. San Antonio, like Memphis was last week, not one of the better teams in the UFL, but they did upset an undefeated DC team. Mm-hmm. So it'll be interesting to see how they will rebound in regards to coming up on Sunday. We've got a lot to get into on this. Are we calling it a Filthy Friday? What are we calling it?
Sure, I like Filthy Friday.
All right, Filthy Friday it is. So Molly has decreed it.
I'm sure something will happen.
I hope so. Usually things wait till Paul Feinbaum comes on the air.
Well, maybe somebody will bring something up.
Hopefully. We'll talk to Wimp Sanderson coming up at the bottom of the hour. Barrett Salee, Skip Holtz, Mike Rodak. A very busy, busy Friday. Hope you'll join us for the next 4 hours. This is Jocks 94.5. 10:16, Jackson 94.5. Coach Wimp Sanderson will join us at the bottom of the hour. Barrett Sallee next hour, along with Coach Skip Holtz, Mike Rodak as well. From Bama 247, we'll get Mike's breakdown, not only of the Alabama situation, but everything with Bill Belichick, because he covered Bill Belichick on a daily basis when he was up in the Northeast. So we'll talk to Mike about Bama and Bill.
Well, one thing about Alabama is that spring weather can be really unpredictable, so that's why you need the reliability of a Trane, voted America's most trusted HVAC brand. And right now you can receive up to a 10-year warranty on parts and labor on select Trane home comfort systems. So to find out more, go and visit Trane.com.
So we'll also talk to Mike Rodak about the story that we briefly mentioned yesterday about Kirk Bowles, who has covered the Texas Longhorns for a very long time, in which Kirk Bowles had a story in the Houston Chronicle detailing that the payroll for the Texas football team is going to be between $35 and $40 million. Well, Outkick.com, they have a story that just came out a few moments ago, and it was detailing that Texas offensive lineman Nick Brooks was arrested last weekend in Austin for driving while intoxicated, but the details of his arrest have not been made public until now. According to the Travis County Sheriff's Office, along with an online affidavit obtained by Outkick, the 18-year-old Brooks was driving while under the influence of marijuana. He was caught going 47 in a 30-mile-per-hour zone by the arresting officer on West 6th Street in Austin. The arresting officer said the player's eyes were bloodshot and watery. Now, according to the arrest report, this from Outkick, Brooks admitted to officers that he had smoked a marijuana vape pen along with a blunt before driving his vehicle. He told officers that he had smoked the pen 3 times, then stated it was a good pen and that he was also feeling it. This is in the arrest.
He said that?
Yeah, this is in the arrest report.
Oh, man.
I guess he doesn't understand the right to remain silent.
Yeah, that's not.
So during the traffic stop, the officer noted that the Texas offensive lineman was experiencing tremors that caused his entire body to shake. He was not under the influence of alcohol, according to the report. Things took another interesting turn when Brooks explained the incident to the officer. The Longhorns lineman said he was coming from a club called Play.
Oh, no.
Which is a 21 and up establishment that made exemptions for the University of Texas underage football players.
Oh, boy. It is a filthy football Friday, I guess.
It kind of has turned that way, hasn't it?
Yeah. See, I knew it would.
Yeah. Didn't take long. Took about 18 minutes. Continuing to read from the Outkick story on this, it's common for underage college athletes to gain entry into bars on or near campus.
Yeah.
I'm sure, Molly, you didn't do that at Nebraska.
Absolutely not. No.
Okay.
Golden child.
Unfortunately for the Texas football program, though, Brooks wasn't done explaining the events of that night. So he continued on.
There's more?
Oh, there's more. He decided to provide further information that most certainly head coach Steve Sarkisian is fuming about this morning.
Well, yeah.
This is what the affidavit states to Outkick. Brooks stated he was taking prospective players to the Bear Cabaret Strip Club next.
Oh, no.
The lineman was booked into Travis County Jail on April 27th and released on a personal recognizance bond.
So did he think that this cop was just like his best friend all of a sudden? Yeah, I'm feeling great. I came from this club. Now I'm going to another
I'm
club.
underage.
I'm underage.
I've been, doing marijuana and I've been driving and I'm taking other underage prospects to this strip club. Nah, this is all good, man.
We're just having a good time.
Yeah. So, yeah. Sarkisian has released a statement to local outlets in Austin, and this is a very, very boilerplate answer that you would see not only from Texas, but Alabama, Auburn, you name it. We're aware of the situation that Nick Brooks have talked with him and are gathering information. We will continue to monitor the legal process and address the situation within the team at the appropriate time. End of the quote from Steve Sarkisian. So just when the University of Texas seems like that they are on the precipice of being the preseason #1 team in America.
Mm.
You have their underage offensive lineman spilling the beans.
Yeah, to his best friend, cop, I guess.
Now, see, back in the old days, Molly, this potentially could shut a program down because the NCAA would already be on campus. They would have investigators, and they would be probably getting ready to throw the book at Texas.
Yeah.
Probation, loss of scholarships, whatever else. But in this day and time, absolutely nothing will happen.
Just a little slap on the wrist, probably.
Now, Sarkisian, there's no doubt that Sarkisian will,
Oh, yeah.
this player will be.
Yeah.
Now, it will be interesting to see if this player is playing against Ohio State
Right.
in week 1.
Mm-hmm.
So Nick Brooks, over the weekend, driving while intoxicated.
I'm just still not over him telling the officer, yeah, it was great. Like that hit or whatever.
Yeah, he stated that it was a good pin
Yes, that.
and that he also is feeling it.
Not something you want to say when you get pulled over.
No. And that the offensive lineman was experiencing tremors that caused his entire body to shake, but he was not under the influence of alcohol, according to the report.
But he was feeling it.
And he also admitted that he was coming from a club called Play,
And then go into another club.
which is a 21 and up establishment that does make exemptions for Texas football players.
Of course they do.
But then he was going to take recruits to a cabaret show, strip club called, I'm trying to find the name of it again. It was Bear something. I'm looking just in case anybody's in Austin this weekend.
Bear Cabaret.
There you go. So if you're in the Austin area this weekend,
Do some sightseeing.
yeah, kind of bored,
Yeah.
looking for something to do.
Yeah.
You don't want to go see the bats underneath the bridge or whatever that is that everybody goes to.
Right.
You know, yeah, go hang out at the, what is it called? Bear
Cabaret.
Or Play.
Or Play. You got two options.
There's your two options. So see, we have helped out the travel and the vacation plans for those that are going up to Cape Cod.
Yeah, to P-Town.
Yeah, to P-Town, because there's a great museum that you can stop by and enjoy.
What was it called again?
I don't know.
Eros?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
Yep.
Oh.
So you can go learn all the history you want to there in P-Town. And then you can go to Austin.
Head to Austin, yeah.
Yeah, and see a cabaret.
Maybe we'll find out about some more adventures today. This has already been so fun in the first 23 minutes.
Well, you predicted it. You said it was going to be a filthy Friday, and lo and behold, there we are. Coming off a great story earlier this week of how Texas was going to pay everybody. I was doing some other investigations on what other programs have reportedly been paying their NIL or their football rosters. And I'll go back to last year because now this was reported that Ross Bjork gave multiple interviews in that Ohio State, for them to win the national championship, their number for their roster was $20 million.
Yeah.
Okay. It was also reported that the Grove Collective over in Ole Miss, they spent more than $10 million on NIL deals last season.
Okay.
Also, we know that Texas Tech this year, during the first portal, they spent $10 million just in that cycle alone.
Yeah.
Chris Lowe reported that Auburn is going to spend north of $20 million on their roster. And then Kirk Bohl's story earlier this week that stated that Texas was going to spend between 35 and 40. Keep that in mind that the 20 or 22 million of that would be coming from the House settlement. And then the remaining part would come from the Texas NIL folks.
That reminds me, I posted that clip on our TikTok from the Houston Chronicle article.
Right.
And basically, you know, all of us saying how this isn't sustainable, even if you are like a Mississippi State and you're in the SEC. Not very many schools can just fork up $40 million for a roster. And I don't know if you've seen it, Pat, but the Texas fans, they have come across our TikTok and the comments are pretty entertaining. It's basically just like, yeah, that's Texas though. Like, suck it up, pretty much. Like,
Just
try
deal with it.
to keep up with us now.
Instead of dumbing it down, because I think
Right.
on that clip I said that the SEC, that Commissioner Sankey is going to get calls.
Yes.
In regards to that will be a conference discussion in Destin of how people are going to say, hey, look, this ain't going to fly.
Like this comment in particular says, "So what?" in all caps. Hook 'em deep in the heart of Texas with a bunch of fire emojis.
Oh, I thought you were going to say a bunch of dollar emoji signs.
No, but there are some of those too. But yeah, I just want to let you know that the Texas fans have flooded us.
Well, welcome to the three man front
welcome.
TikTok site.
We'll have you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have a lot of Landrum dancing videos.
Yeah.
Conrad, a lot of food challenges that he fails.
And stories about his childhood.
Yeah. So we appreciate the fine folks down in Austin, Texas, and parts in between checking us out on the old TikTok.
Thanks for Thanks for all the comments.
No, keep them rolling in.
Keep 'em coming.
We read them.
We do.
We might not read them on the air, but we do consume them.
It's like Landrum with the text.
Yeah.
Can't read a lot of them on air,
No,
but they are there.
Edit them in person,
Mhm.
no doubt. Now's the time for you to check out Courtesy GMC in Trustful. The very best in inventory and service is found right there off of I-459, exit 32, Courtesy GMC. Whether you need your tires rotated, whether you need your oil changed, I get it done both right there at Courtesy GMC in Trustful. If you have a little fender bender, their body shop is just incredible. They can take care of you there too. Not to mention the fact, the very best when you're talking about the GMC lineup that they have to offer for you, whether it's the Yukon XL, the Acadias, the Terrains. How about great trucks like the Sierra 1500 and the Canyon? And their pre-owned inventory is the deepest you're going to find anywhere in central Alabama. I went by there yesterday, and the inventory is through the roof, and they're ready to make deals right now. Courtesy will beat any deal on any new GMC. I'm telling you that right now for a fact. They're going to tell you to go to courtesybirmingham.com, check out all the current deals that they have, and then they're going to tell you check out all the other dealerships, and you're going to find that Courtesy GMC is going to beat anything that anyone else has to offer, not only in the state of Alabama or in Birmingham Metro, but across the Southeast. It's a short drive right there to Trustful off of exit 32, I-459. Go to their website, courtesybirmingham.com. Go by there this weekend. They've got TVs everywhere in the showroom, so you will not miss your favorite sporting event. Go by see Drew Lawley, Josh Gargis, and the fantastic team right there at Courtesy GMC in Trustful. Coming up next on Three Man Front, brought to you by Crane Works, we'll have an opportunity to catch up with Coach Wimp Sanderson. 10:33, Jackson 94.5 on this Friday. Each week, we're blessed to be able to talk to Coach Wimp Sanderson, and it's brought to you by Craneworks. Coach Wimp Sanderson joins us here on Three Man Front. And Coach, before we start, I can't tell you how much we think about you and your family during this time. And we're praying for you
we
guys.
did it my way. We tried to do it my way. The reason I'm on is I just wanted to tell everybody when the service is, and we'll talk a little sports. Wednesday at the University Church of Christ in Tuscaloosa. We'll honor in that. The visitation will be from 9:30 to 11, and the service is from 11 to. The three boys are going to speak. My three sons. You can tell I'm not going to be able to, but anyway, I hope people will come, and it was an absolute wonderful life. We were married 67 years, and she, was around four coaches, three boys and me that coached all the time. That's a pain in the rear anyway. So anyway, you have to be around four coaches. If some win, some will. Not all of them were going to win every night. So they were the ones that were upset, and she did all she could to be a coach's wife and be a mother at the same time. So I appreciate you having me on. I started not to be on, but I hope people will come and see. We'll have a visitation from 9:30 to 11 and service at 11. We're going to take her to Florence and bury her late Wednesday afternoon, about 4 o'clock. That's where my plot is. That's where I'm from, and then I will be buried next to her whenever, and have a short service at Florence about 4 o'clock. So people that can come to that, I'd appreciate you coming if you can. I understand if you can't, because a lot of times you just want to come to visitation and leave. I hope you'll stay. The three boys will each speak about 10 minutes. I've told them not to run it over, and I don't think I'm going to talk. So anyway, I appreciate you having me on, Pat.
No, Coach, it's
it is what it is, and it's difficult. Anything in the sports world that I need, I know the transfer portal is about over. St. John's in basketball has had a great year in the transfer portal. If you can judge that, prior to it. I think Auburn spent a bunch of money in the transfer portal in basketball. Alabama's got some players. I don't know if they need some more or not. But when you look at the roster of 11 people in the St. John's game, not St. John's, one of the games. Only two left. So in basketball, you got to get some players. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, not at all. I was going to ask you when you were coaching at Alabama and you started. I know it's a lot different now in regards to players considering the NBA and the information that they now are able to ascertain from NBA scouts. They go through all these different combines. How has it changed, Coach, from when you were coaching it and maybe a player was, I'm thinking about maybe putting my name in the draft and compared to what it is now and what they have to go through?
Well, they sort of had agents slip around.
Okay.
And tried to get. I'll tell you that's a good question, because here's a story I never told. Of course, Derek McKee was a great player for me, and big kid that we got, just terrific player. An agent or whatever came to Paul Bright Hall and talked to talk to Derek, and one of my point guard showed up, and he gave Derek I think it was $1,200 or a check of $1,200, something like that. And they just slipped around like that, and tried to do stuff to find that, that's the way it worked. Now
Right.
this day and time, we wouldn't even look at $1,200.
No.
And I always tell the story of me being in charge of giving out the check, the scholarship money,
Right.
$15 a month.
Oh, wow.
And I gave the money, and guess what? After 2 weeks, the last time I looked, half of $12, half of $15 is $7.50.
Mm-hmm.
We had a check written for each player, football back, all of them, for $7.50 every 2 weeks. And they came and got it, and the line was from here to Birmingham. So I mean, they lined up to get that seven. So in that I think that's a good story there in itself.
No kidding.
$7.50, and they're fighting to be sure to get that $7.50. A lot of them were staying in Paul Brown Hall,
right?
Of course, the football and basketball people were, but regardless if they were on scholarship, whether they're on Paul Brown Hall or not, they could take the girlfriend out to eat or do something. $7.50 back then.
Well, yeah, it certainly is, and it says a lot about, I guess, the way the game has changed, Coach. Because I know for many years when Coach Cal was in Lexington, it was always a one and done situation. Now you've got kids maybe not wanting to be one and done and go to the NBA, but maybe one and done at their current school and go make more money in the transfer portal. Right. It's amazing.
Yeah, it really is. And some of them, like quarterback at Texas, made a mistake.
Yes, sure did.
He Peter State at Texas, there's no telling what Sark and them would have given him. I don't know why he did. There's a feeling in your heart that you just want to get to the pros.
Right.
You've gotten there through football. You've already been cheered on. You've hugged the cheerleaders, and everybody thinks you're great. But for whatever reason, even that's the one time that a little bit. Surely his agent gave him some advice or something. That's one time he almost want to stay there, just like you said. And he didn't. He went pro, and because he, pro football he thought was the thing for him to do. So I don't know.
Well, Coach, I wanted to ask you about President Trump coming to Tuscaloosa, because I know you've probably met a few of these the free leaders of the free world throughout your career. How many have you rubbed elbows with?
I don't know. George Wallace is one. When I went to play in the golf tournament in Montgomery, I'd see George. When I hang up, I'll tell you a bunch of them. But
sure,
I got to see Bill Clinton.
Okay.
I went into his booth and shook hands with him one time when I was in Little Rock. Clinton was running for president and got to be president. One time I was on the plane with the president just died. Who just died? President. Which one just passed
Jimmy
away?
Carter.
From Georgia.
Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter.
Jimmy Carter. I was with Jimmy Carter, and one time I was with Jimmy Carter's wife in a plane.
Rosalind.
Rosalind. I was with her. She didn't know my name. Of course, I introduced myself, and that was about it. But I've run across a lot of so-called big names, and of course, I haven't met Trump, but I met. I did meet another president, one from Texas.
Bush, one of the Bushes.
Yeah, I did. So I met one of the Bushes. I met them at a ball game, and I think it was in Houston. So I've run around a lot of them. People love all that kind of stuff, and anytime. The funny part, I don't know if I've told this or not. So if I have, just pay attention. I mean, no, don't pay
No,
attention.
I will.
I want to say, I'm guessing, I got the job in 1980. I think it was about then. I'm out at Arnold Palmer's golf course hitting golf balls
Mm-hmm.
by myself, just hitting golf balls. I was there. I don't know what I was doing there, but I was there. Guy walks up to me and says to me, "Could I play with you?" And I said, "Sure, you can play with me." Glad to have you. And we played 18 holes, and it was Nick Saban.
Was it really?
So, yeah, and so I asked Nick about it sometime when he ever had him on the show. So I told him, I said, I wish you quit giving Mal more credit for running down there and waiting for Nick. I said, I got Nick Saban's job. Y'all all talk about Mal. Mal didn't do anything.
Yeah, you got that deal done playing golf 18 holes with him.
Yeah, I let him beat me. He's gonna beat me anyway. I said I was gonna beat me. So it was.
Oh, what a great story!
That was one of the funniest things that ever happened. And I think he was maybe the defensive coordinator at Michigan State.
Okay.
He may have been, but he was at that small school before Michigan State. I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was about, and I won't say it's 80 or 81, and that was the funniest to play golf with Nick and then take credit for getting.
Do you give Nick a hard time when you talk to him and tell him how bad you beat him on that round?
Oh yeah, I mention it all the time. He spoke at Jimmy Raines, AMC Jimmy Raines banquet.
Yeah.
And, by the way, if I can hold up, I'm going to do it on the 14th.
Okay.
And this year, the main speaker is going to be Bruce Pearl.
Oh wow, that'll be good.
And what they have done in the past is they've had Sonny and I as the MC.
Mm-hmm.
Sonny don't know where he is half the time. That's what I say. And so he just called me before I did this, and I get up there and actually I make fun of Sonny. I try to, and Sonny will. I said, well, Sonny wants to tell a joke. I introduced last year Tupperville there. Of course, he's running the office, and the other girl was there, and so Sonny will get up and tell a joke, and I won't promise you one thing: he'll tell the same cotton picking joke if he tells two every year, and so we get through. He said, "How'd I do?" I said, "Sonny, you told same cotton picking joke again." I said, he said, "They laughed." I said, "Well, they didn't laugh as much as I thought they'd laugh because they all knew it."
Yeah.
And but anyway, we're going to MC it, and Bruce Pearl is going to be the speaker this year, and
that'll be a good time.
And I said that because we talked about Nick, and Nick was. I think we had Nick last year, and we had 1,000 people there, so it was okay. It was Nick's good. He's a good speaker. He tells you a lot of things that are interesting. He's good. So
yeah.
I can't think of anybody else that I'm sure when I hang up, I'll think a lot of them. And I didn't mean to get too emotional on the show. But,
Coach, there's no apologies needed at all. And our good friends at Craneworks and David Upton, they have been just so wonderful throughout the years and bringing you to us on this program.
Well, it's Craneworks. Go to craneworks.com. And Craneworks is located all throughout the state of Alabama, in Huntsville, Mobile, everywhere wherever you want to go, Craneworks will take it down and put it up for you. They're great people. And David, you're exactly right about David. So go by there, and hopefully you'll tell me you heard it on the show, and you'll keep me on. I appreciate you being on. Tell Landrum I said hello.
I will.
And I appreciate everything y'all have done, and I look forward to being on next week. Thank you for having me on today, and I apologize if
Coach. Well, first off, you know how we feel about you. We love you. We love your family, and we're thinking about you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Coach. Thank you. That's Coach Wimp Sanderson joining us here on Three Man Front. 10:53, Jocks 94.5. Appreciate Wimp Sanderson. It's been a very difficult week, to say the very least. Appreciate him spending a couple minutes with us here on Three Man Front. Some news coming out of the NBA, and this is big. It's being reported now that Greg Popovich will no longer be the head coach of the San Antonio Spurs. He is transitioning full-time to the team president. Popovich is in the Basketball Hall of Fame, the NBA's all-time winningest coach. He led the Spurs to 5 championships. He's had a stroke over the last year, so he is now going to step aside as the team's head coach, but he'll be the full-time team president there for the San Antonio Spurs.
Well, with the NBA playoffs going on, the NHL playoffs, and some Major League Baseball going on, you need to go and check out our friends at Big Whiskeys because they have several big screens in their bar with unique cocktails and over 120 whiskeys on tap. Plus, if the weather holds up this weekend, you can go out and enjoy the outdoor patio and game area. It's great for families, and the kids get to eat free every Tuesday. So like I said, that's Big Whiskeys in the Stadium Trace Village off Highway 150 near the Hoover Met.
A very emotional interview we just had with Coach Wimp Sanderson. I know many of you have been texting into the program at 1-800-239-WJOX, 205-834-9450, Molly, in regards to Coach Wimp.
I just want to say thank you to everyone for texting and sending your condolences out to Wimp. The Dutchman says, I want Coach to know that he is both in my heart and my wife's during this difficult time. We love you, Coach. JJ says, please send Coach our condolences. Steve from Tuscaloosa says, I appreciate Coach for being on the program today during his difficult time of loss. Prayers and peace be with Wimp and his family. Johnny said, whew, Coach had me in tears just listening. And I know you couldn't see it on the YouTube stream, but I was back here in the studio myself in tears. So we love you, Coach. Brad says, Wimp is absolutely wonderful, had me tearing up. So, Coach, if you're listening, we all love you. Everyone loves you. And thank you again for joining us today. Let's see. Drake says, thinking of you, Coach, roll tide. And yeah, so thank you to all your messages for Coach. This texter, kind of changing subjects now, he asked, is the Bear Cabaret anything like the Bear Country Jamboree at Disney World?
Oh, my goodness.
What a 180.
That was a nice pivot there, Molly.
Yeah, thank you.
From going from that.
Well, I'm just going through all the texters, and I'm like, yep, this is the next one.
Now you know what Landrum feels like.
I really do. Ugh.
And if you missed it earlier, there was a Texas football player that was arrested, under 21 years of age. He gets caught for speeding. And come to find out, he admitted to the police officer that he was
feeling great.
Feeling great because he had done some marijuana.
He did.
And that he had been at a club that they allowed underage Texas football players to frequent. And then he was about to take some recruits that are underage to
the Bear Cabaret.
to the Bear Cabaret, which is obviously, you can figure it out with the name. It's a strip joint.
I'm going to assume that's not like the Bear Jamboree at Disney World.
I don't think
Maybe
so.
a little different.
Yeah, just a tad.
This texter says that was his first high. And one more, Pat, this one's for you. Cubs need a third baseman. Are the Cardinals willing to trade Arenado?
I'm sure they would if the Cubs are willing to take on all of his contract, because that was the holdup with Boston and the Houston Astros. Boston and the Stros did not want to take on the rest of his deal. Wanted the Cardinals to pay a good amount of it, and the Cardinals said, no, we'll just keep him. We'll see. Coming up next on Three Man Front, we'll talk a little baseball with Barrett Sallee, pregame host for the Braves Radio Network. They play tonight right here on Jocks 94.5 beginning at 6 o'clock. Pat and Molly with you until 2 o'clock. Thanks for tuning us in on this Friday. This is Jocks 94.5. It is 11 o'clock. Welcome back in. This is Three Man Front. Pat Smith, Molly Robinson with you until 2 o'clock. Landrum down at the beach covering the beach volleyball championships. Conrad is just down there being a derelict on the beach.
He's on assignment.
Oh, is that what we're calling it? Just kidding. He's down there with some friends. I'm sure having a nice, wholesome time there in Destin, Florida. Joining us on the Higginbotham Hotline, let's talk some Braves baseball, a team that has definitely turned the corner. Barrett Sallee, the host that you can hear tonight at 6 o'clock right here on Jocks 94.5 as the Braves and the Dodgers get ready to do battle there in Hotlanta. Barrett, I hope you've had a good week, and the Braves certainly have.
Yeah, it's been a nice couple of weeks actually, but I know the Rockies are the Rockies, and no one really cares all that much about them. But taking 2 of 3 from 2 separate teams on the road, going 4 and 6 on a road trip is really impressive. I don't care who you are. And then I think more specifically doing it without the benefit of the long ball for 3 straight days, winning 2 of 3 games. I don't care against who you're playing. If you do win those 2 games with 14 hits and no home runs, that's actually a good thing in my mind, because the home runs are going to come around. But the Braves, I think the way they've been able to rebound at the plate, especially at the back end of the order with Nick Allen and Eli White, and those dudes playing in a way that I don't think anybody expected. It's been fun, and hopefully that continues this weekend. Although it's a little bit of a different monster this weekend with the Dodgers.
Well, let's talk about the offense for the Braves, because over the last 15 days, the Braves had the 5th best batting average in all of baseball at 279. What do you think has been the key for their upswing in regards to their offense?
Well, I think it's a more thoughtful plan at the plate.
Okay.
Tim Hires was brought in as the hitting coach, and his goal was for them to be a little bit more patient, work deeper into counts, get starting pitchers out of games earlier. I'm not saying they've done that every game, because every pitcher has you have to attack each pitcher differently. But I think finally they've started to do that more often. I think after in the middle of the 7-game losing streak to start the season, it was clear they started pressing. I mean, they started pressing in Game 3 against the Padres, and they really couldn't get out of that mindset for a couple of weeks. Now they have. So, again, it's not happening every game, because certain pitchers, you want to play to your strengths and their weaknesses. But I think overall, being smart about how they, how they have individual at bats, go deep in counts, things like that has really changed. And then, it is contagious. So having Eli White come out and do his thing, and having, watching Michael Harris have success down at the 7-hole or the 6-hole, depending on the specific day, I think all those things have helped relax everybody, and that's gone a long way.
Not that it should surprise anybody when the news came out that Kelenic was being sent down, hitting 167 with 2 home runs. Do you think that this is something that he'll be able to go down and get it ironed out and maybe be back in a month or so? Or where do you see him in regards to his lifelong, I guess, prognosis for the Braves in regards to the rest of the season?
I think there are 2 possibilities for him. Go somewhere else,
right?
Which I think is probably the more likely scenario, or get one last shot based on circumstances that are out of his control. He's not going to play his way back on to the Braves.
Right.
So if he hits 400 down there, he's not getting called up. But if certain circumstances allow him to, if a spot opens or there's an injury or whatever, I think he will get another spot, but it'll be his last regardless, right? They're at the point where they will eat that contract, and they're fine with releasing him. But you never, like, if the other alternative is Eddie Rosario, you have to have some insurance. You have to have an insurance policy, right?
Sure.
And it's not a good insurance policy. The premium's pretty darn high when you're paying for it, but the talent is in there somewhere. I don't think that's ever been in doubt. It's just not been unlocked, and it probably will never be unlocked. But I think if he's back up with the Braves, it's probably a bad thing. Something happened where, a spot opened up for him, but he's not going to get a shot just because he's tearing it up in AAA. Like there's just that ship has sailed.
I know you guys talked about it on your podcast in regards to what the time frame is, because as of right now, unless something has changed, correct me if I'm wrong, but there is no time frame for the return of Acuna or Strider as of this moment, correct?
That's as far as we know. Yeah, it's been radio silent from the Braves. Now, the Braves, the organization itself, does a really good job of keeping things quiet. But,
sure.
Last we talked to Snicker here, it was Acuna going to Florida to work on some things, and then Strider was still, we don't know. And so that was a week ago. And so it's been. I'm surprised it hasn't been brought up. When they were on the road trip. I guarantee you it's going to be asked today. Smith's availability is at 4:25 Eastern time. So if somebody else doesn't beat me to it, I'm certainly going to ask about it. So it's kind of odd. I don't know how. I think it's more concerning with Strider because, pulled hammy playing catch, it's just a freak thing.
Mm-hmm.
And Strider told us that it's a grade 1, which is different than it's a less serious than what Michael Harris had last year. But he's not with the team. He's not, doing really anything as far as we know. So that to me is odd. With Acuna, okay, I get it. He's gone through this ACL thing before. It's fine if if he wants to take a little bit more time. Cool, I get it. But it is odd that we haven't heard anything. I'm more concerned with Strider, though. I think that's a little bit more curious.
Talking to Barrett Sallee, you can hear Barrett tonight starting at 6 o'clock on the Braves pregame show right here on Jox 94.5. All right, so the Dodgers are in town over the weekend. This Dodger team, they look unbeatable at home. They're 15-3 at Chavez Ravine, but they're 6-7 away from home. And they just dropped some series with the Phillies and the Nationals on the road. What are you seeing from this Dodger team right now? And can the Braves take advantage of their poor play on the road?
I think they can. The problem is that the rotation issues that they have aren't really going to affect them this series because they get Yamamoto.
Right.
Sasaki's not that good, but it's the normal rest. They pushed Dustin May up, but they've been using a 6-man rotation anyway, so Dustin May will start on Sunday. A little different, but the fact that Glasnow and Snell are on the shelf really doesn't impact the Braves this weekend, just based on how things have shaken out. But they're on their 10th starting pitcher this year. I mean, that seems crazy that they're on their 10th different starting pitcher.
That really is.
So that means it almost seems impossible. If you're in September, okay, sure, fine, yeah. But not May 1st.
Not the first month of the season, yeah.
Yeah, so I think the bullpen for them is getting taxed a little bit. If there's a place to attack, I think it's there because at some point, I don't care how good you are, if you're kind of a work in progress for a month, if there's just all kinds of moving parts and pitchers don't know where they fall, eventually it's going to be a problem. So I think getting into that bullpen, sort of like we talked about, be patient, especially today, make Yamamoto, work in counts and see if you can get him out of the game early. That's job one. But it's going to be tough. I do think though, Sasaki, there's he's that pitching matchup for the Braves, and I mean Bryce Elder and Dustin May on Sunday. Look, I'm not going to say Bryce Elder is bad, but the fact that he's had some 2 rough first innings, but then righted the ship in both, I don't know. Like I'm starting to trust him a little more.
Right.
And if that changes on Sunday, fine. But I think it does. It's a strange weekend series from the pitching perspective because there are just so many moving parts for the Braves, and yeah. I don't know what to make of Grant Holmes either because I said this on the show yesterday. Grant Holmes, it's like feast or famine, right? The last 3 games he has been, he's been marginally effective, and that might be a little bit complimentary. but the opponent's batting average is like 158. So yeah, he gave up 6 earned runs last game, but the opponent's batting average is still 158 for the season. It's
That's
like,
amazing.
okay, so what is the problem? Is there a problem? Is there not a problem? I don't know. And so I hope he comes back and pitches the way he did a couple times earlier in the month, because it is in there. We know the talent's there, and he's going to have his A game.
All right, so we're a month into the season, and we will continue to ask you this question as we matriculate through the baseball season. In regards to the teams that look for real for you, and the teams that look like they're okay, it's the first month of the season, they're going to come back down to earth. I guess the pretenders and the contenders. Who you got?
So I was not on board with the Giants early on.
Mm-hmm.
I'm starting to sort of come off of
You're
that,
warming up on
right?
the Giants.
I am warming up on the Giants, and I just think that maybe from a talent perspective, they do have it. Their issue, though, I think the entire NL West is something. If one of those teams start cannibalizing everybody else, or if they start cannibalizing each other, then 2 teams are going to get knocked out of the playoff race, which is something that the Braves would actually love to see. But those top 4, those are really good teams. We saw the D-backs over the last weekend. They're really solid. I think the contender that I'm most concerned about is Detroit. I know Terry Skubal, excuse me, Skubal has been really good, and the rotation's been solid. I just don't know if it's sustainable. I am sort of lukewarm on the Mariners out west. I'm not sold on the Athletics. They're only I think the Athletics are 2 games back of first place in the AL West, which is just crazy to me. I'm not sold on them, but my dream is the Athletics and the Rays in a playoff series where every single game is played in a minor league stadium. That's just my guilty pleasure. The one thing that I really want to happen.
That would be funny.
I want the Athletics to play well, but I don't know if it's sustainable.
Now, I brought this up on the show. One night, I got home later than usual, and I had to get my baseball fixed before I went to bed, and I caught the Rangers and A's playing in that bandbox out there, and I was like, "This is ridiculous." I mean, at least in Steinbrenner Field, I mean I know it's a small venue, but you don't have the feel like this is that in Sacramento just looks like trash. Like that, there's no reason that Major League Baseball should allow that. I mean, that's No,
I agree. I mean, Steinbrenner Field, the outfield looks fine. It's kind of it has a little bit of a look of a major league field. Even though the main stands aren't, but that field in Sacramento is legit minor league.
Yes,
there's
nothing about it.
You can't even. Yeah, I mean, I think if they were going to do anything, just go play in the minor league stadium. What is it, the Stars or the Aces now in Las Vegas?
Yeah, why not?
Just go play there.
I mean, heck, they played XFL games in that stadium a couple years ago. Go play a baseball game there.
Yeah,
it's just it.
Yeah, why not?
Well, hopefully they're going to get all that settled one day soon. In regards to, I know the A's are now building their stadium in Las Vegas, and hopefully the Tampa situation, whether it's Orlando, Tampa, whatever the case may be, that appears to be on the horizon getting done. Well, listen, Barrett, it should be a fun weekend. Really good baseball as the Dodgers are in town taking on the Braves. And we always appreciate you joining us. You can hear Barrett tonight starting at 6 o'clock on the pregame show right here on Jocks 94.5. We'll have the series all weekend long. Barrett, have a good weekend. We'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, Pat. See you.
Appreciate it. That's Barrett Sully joining us here on the Higginbotham Hotline. You deserve solutions that are built for you. Higginbotham is your one-source solution for insurance, financial, and HR services. More 3-man front on this Friday. Skip Holtz, head coach of the Birmingham Stallions, at the bottom of the hour. Next hour, Mike Rodak will be in studio, talk a little Alabama football and basketball. That's all next on 3-man front. Appreciate Barrett Sallee joining us, talking Braves baseball each and every week here on Jock's three-man front. You can hear the Braves tonight. A reminder, 6 o'clock as they start against the Los Angeles Dodgers, a 3-game series. Grant Holmes on the bump, 2-1 with a 4.50 ERA. He's going to take on the Major League Baseball's best pitcher from an ERA perspective, who has a 1.06 earned run average. That's Yoshi Yamamoto. He is on the bump, the right-handed pitcher for the Dodgers. Braves 6 games back, third place in the National League East. Last 15 days, though, the Braves have been hot offensively, 5th best batting average in Major League Baseball. So we'll see what happens tonight against Yamamoto there in Atlanta. We will talk to the head football coach of the Birmingham Stallions, Skip Holtz, at the bottom of the hour. We'll find out what the status is of his quarterback situation and discuss last weekend's frustrating game at Protective Stadium as they lost to a winless Memphis team, and now they're playing a San Antonio Brahmas team on Sunday at Protective Stadium. So we'll get the very latest from Skip Holtz. Let's go to the phones at 1-800-239-WJOX. Let's go to Miles. He joins us on Three-Man Front. Hey, Miles.
Hey, good morning.
How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you, and I hope everyone there is.
We are.
Good to hear. Pat, I've asked you about this before, and you've gone into how North Carolina and Virginia are the two desirables for the SEC. Those are the ones they want.
Correct.
If the SEC is let's say they're negotiating with ESPN, and they say, okay, we want North Carolina, Virginia. Is ESPN going to say, okay, we're cool with that, but you've got to bring in Florida State and Clemson too?
The whole rub with all of that, Miles, has to do with the relationship that ESPN has with the ACC. And so then at that point in time, does the ACC schools cry foul because they have a contract with ESPN? Is ESPN basically trying to gut their conference to prop up another conference that they have a relationship with? That is the problematic future of trying to grab those schools. Now, based on what the ACC has now enacted, it makes it a whole heck of a lot easier for these schools to independently say, okay, we're gone. And if they were to leave the conference, then that would clear, like for instance, let's take Texas and Oklahoma. When Texas and Oklahoma decided they wanted to come to the Southeastern Conference, the first thing that they had to do is they had to clean the decks on their side of things, and then they had to have a conversation with the Southeastern Conference because the SEC is not going to go pirate other schools from other conferences. You can say whatever you want to, the language, it's semantics, but it's basically if North Carolina and Virginia want to be in the SEC or the Big Ten, then they would have to basically resign their position in the ACC, pay the buyout, whatever the case may be, and then submit a proposal for membership in whatever conference they wanted to be in.
Gotcha. Thank you. And have you heard anything about Kansas, like potentially being team number 20 for the SEC?
No, I have not. Now, I have heard rumblings a few months ago about Kansas in the Big Ten, but not Kansas to another conference, as opposed, or like you just mentioned, the Southeastern Conference. I think if the SEC is ever going to expand again, and I don't see it happening in the course of the next few years, but when that window does open up for North Carolina, Florida State, Clemson, and Virginia and the rest of the ACC, then you could potentially see some movement maybe early 2030, 2031, because that's when the media deals come up for the Big Ten. And so at that point in time, the Big Ten might say, you know what, we want to go into Florida or we want to go into Virginia, whatever the case may be.
Okay. Last question. If with the whole ESPN Major League Baseball fallout, is ESPN going to have to buy more programming to compensate for that? Or do you think they just how do you think they handle that? Because aren't they going to lose? Like, they're going to lose Sunday Night Baseball, right?
That is correct. Now, there have been continuing negotiations between Major League Baseball and ESPN because ESPN is about to launch their direct-to-consumer product in which you obviously can pay a fee and then you're basically getting the cable channel and all of its access points on basically a streaming subscription. I know if you have ESPN Plus and things of that nature, you basically get that. But now they're talking about adding even more features to ESPN. And there has been talk that Major League Baseball could potentially sell a shorter type of media rights deal to ESPN that ESPN could put on their direct-to-consumer streaming device as opposed to putting it on their cable channels.
Okay. I'm guessing that might help compensate for all the problems with the regional sports networks that are going on right now.
Yes, and basically, if anybody has been paying attention, and I know a lot of people in our neck of the woods, whether it's the Braves or maybe you being in North Mississippi, I think you might be in the territory for the Cardinals. It's a situation to where these baseball teams are losing money now because so are the local broadcast rights because, it's the streaming has taken over. Less people are doing cable, and now they're trying to offer more direct to consumer situations like we were just talking about for ESPN. So I think ultimately you're going to have an opportunity. It's going to be all a la carte for everything, especially when it comes to Major League Baseball.
I appreciate your time, Pat.
Thanks, Miles.
Everybody, thank you.
Thank you. Be safe up there in North Mississippi, giving us a call, listening to us on the Jocks 94.5 app. You can too, whether you're going to the beach like Conrad and Landrum, or if you're miles over in Mississippi or our good friends in Colorado or wherever in the great
Utah sometimes?
Yes.
P-Town?
That's right. And always have a lot of folks listen to us on the Jocks 94.5 app. Do we have a lot of listeners in P-Town?
I hope we do now after we brought them up
yesterday.
Yeah.
There was an interview on our sister station up in Nashville, Tennessee. Josh Heupel had an opportunity to sit down with 3 Hour Lunch. Take a listen to this clip from our brethren up there in Nashville, our Cumulus station, 104.5 The Zone. This is what was said in regards to the Nico situation.
Nico Iamaleava situation. I'm just curious from your point of view in today's world of college football with all of the transition and everything. How surprised were you with the way that all played out and that he's no longer on that roster?
Well, let's start calling it the Joey Aguilar situation.
Okay. I like it. I like it.
End of the day, that's just the landscape. You're not going to keep everybody. You got opportunities to put your roster together. I feel like we got a team that's accountable, connected, works hard, competes hard, and we're built to win. Now we got to go earn it every single day, and we got some new pieces that got to get onboarded here in the course of May. That's the nature of college football, and so we'll get ready and keep competing and keep growing.
How about that? I love that answer. He said it's not a Nico situation; it's a Joey Aguilar situation.
Yeah, I like that.
He's our quarterback.
Next man up.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Great answer to that question by Josh Heupel in regards to the transfer portal and the big story that happened right around March Madness. I remember we were at Twin Peaks that Friday when he didn't show up.
Yeah.
He didn't show up to practice, and all heck broke loose on that weekend. Coming up next on Three Man Front, we'll talk to the head football coach of the Birmingham Stallions. Always a great interview with Skip Holtz, a very honest interview about his football team. That's coming up next on this Friday edition of Three Man Front. 11:32 Jocks 94.5 on this Friday. Each and every week on this show, Coach Skip Holtz, head coach of the Birmingham Stallions, joins us here on Three Man Front. Coach, I hope you're doing well on this Friday.
I am doing well on this Friday. And how about yourself?
We are doing very well. I know you guys are pumped and excited to be back at Protective Stadium coming up Sunday against the San Antonio Brahmas. But before we talk about that, I want to go back to last week's game against Memphis in that overtime shootout. I want to go back to the end of the first half because I know a lot of our listeners were calling us on Monday trying to discuss and kind of, I guess, decipher kind of what took place there towards the end of the first half with the challenge, and then of course the field goal, the kick six, and all that. Can you kind of take us through the last minute or so there before the end of the first half?
Yeah, we were backed up, had a third and really long situation, and Case Cookus scrambled up to get the ball to about the 45-yard line, and we've got a kicker that's got a really strong leg, and I looked at Coach Bonio, our special teams coach, and I said, can we kick it? And he said, it'd be a long one, but let's give him a shot. And so I had two options. I was either going to run it down to 4 seconds and kick it on the last play of the half, or I was going to run it down to 10 seconds and go for it on fourth down. And if we didn't make it, I leave them the ball at about the 45-yard line, 55 yards away with the defense on the field. If we didn't make it, but try and get it a little bit closer with 10 seconds, call another timeout, and then kick the field goal. But we made the decision to kick the field goal, and so I called timeout with 4 seconds to go, and then I was like, ooh, this might be too far. And at that point, I only had 4 seconds on the clock and made the decision to kick the field goal, and obviously hindsight's 20/20. If I had it to do all over again, I would have went back and just thrown a Hail Mary into the end zone to end the half. Because I hate that we gave up 7 points on that play, with the return. You'd love to, you practice kick and cover, but you got a lot of offensive linemen that are on the field trying to tackle a skill guy in space, and it didn't work out. But I certainly would love to have played that differently, where I would have run it down and called the timeout with 10 seconds left and then gone ahead and gone for it on fourth down.
Coach Skip Holtz joins us here on Three Man Front, and talking about that game, you had to be impressed with the fight of your football team because, just being honest, the first half did not go very well from an offensive standpoint, but you were able to get things moving, and getting the game into overtime speaks volumes on your football team and the DNA in which they're not going to give up and they're going to fight hard for you.
No, I mean, just like, we had the 2-minute drive to end the game against Arlington to end up beating Arlington 10-9. We got to find a way to be more productive on offense. And, it's been a struggle with Alex Magoo going to IR and being out, and then Matt Corral being out. And you feel like you're breaking in a new quarterback every week. Here we were week 5 and we're playing our third quarterback, and it's just been very hard to get any type of consistency. And I thought Case Cook has competed his tail off. I think he brings leadership value. I think he's got great intangibles. I think he had a bunch of plays that were really good, but in his first game, you have to look at that like that was his preseason game in this offense. That's his first time to go out and play in this offense, and we left a lot of offense on the field, certainly where we could have been more productive than we were. But, what we've got to do a better job, we got to run the ball better than we are right now. And when you have your third quarterback in, you got to be able to put your saddle a little bit more on your offensive lineman and your running game and get a little bit of running game going. But when you're struggling running the ball, then your play action really isn't very good, and you're going right back into a drop back passing game. But, I say that, but I also say that that seems to be where we're at our best when we're in a 2-minute mindset and we're in hurry and going to the line and throwing the drop back game. So we got to find out, we've got to find out really who we are. And that sounds strange going into the 6th week of the season. But when you take, Cole Snyder's missed games up front on the offensive line, DeLauro's missed 2 or 3. You've got Keaton Sutherland, the guy that's starting at center right now with Cole Snyder out, has missed a couple games. You're on your third quarterback we talked about. You've had Deion Kane has missed games. Amari Rogers has missed games. We're having a hard time finding some consistency. We had LaMichael Petway went out in the opening game with and he's on IR right now. You've got Jaron Jones, one of the starting tackles. He's on IR right now. It just seems like we've been kind of being bitten up by the injury bug, and we're We just got to do a great job of protecting the ball. We're playing really good on defense right now. We got to punt it away, and we got to be willing to win a low-scoring game, or we got to find a way to create more offense to be able to put more points on the board with what we're doing. And I think, the attitude is incredible. It's great right now. Players are upbeat. They're positive. As bad as everything is, I know in Birmingham right now we've lost 2 games and the sky has fallen. And, I got asked in the post game, is everybody else catching up with Birmingham? And we're still sitting here first place in our division. So as bad as everything is and as broke as it is, we're still first place in our division. The goal in this thing is that we got to get in the top 2 in our division and find a way to get into the playoffs. And we're going to continue to try and progress and improve and get better so we can be playing our best football at the end of the year when you get into weeks 9, 10, 11, and 12, which is when really that's when you win championships is late in the season because you've developed. I think we're learning a lot about our team. We're getting a lot of experience. We're getting a lot of guys reps. But with that, the growing pains that goes along with all those different guys playing is just the consistency and the continuity that we're really trying to develop up front on our offensive line and with our skilled players and quarterback.
In regards to the quarterback situation, you've been very upfront. You told us last week in regards to the injury with Matt Corral. Do you have an update on his prognosis moving forward?
Yeah, right now he is out. He will not dress this week. He is trying to push it and kind of restrained it a little bit, and therefore we'll go into this game with the same 3 we had last week. We're going to activate Jamar Smith again this weekend, and Case Cookus will start the game, but Andrew Peasley will play in this game. And so I want to see a little bit of what he can do, and we will play. We'll get an opportunity to see a little bit of both quarterbacks and see what we can do to put some points on the board.
In regards to your opponent this weekend, the San Antonio Brahmas, they kind of shocked a lot of people a couple weeks ago by knocking off an undefeated DC Defenders team. Their quarterback, Kellen Mond, we're very familiar with. He was a quarterback in the Southeastern Conference. What else can you tell us about this Brahmas team in regards to what you will be facing on Sunday at Protective Stadium?
Very, very talented football team. Obviously, when you look at them, they have about half of their football team returning last year, which was the team that we played in the championship game. They have a lot of talent. They have a tailback that's got breakaway speed. He's probably the fastest tailback, big play tailback in the league. And he has an opportunity he could score from anywhere because of his speed. You got to know where he is on the field and some of the different things they're doing with them. They have struggled, and I know they've had some injuries. They've had some injuries as well, but just with what they were able to do to line up and beat DC, they went out there and they put up 24 points against DC and beat them 24-18. I think their defense last year, they were the number 1 defense in the league. They've got some new faces in the back end, and they're probably a lot like us, as I said, and they're trying to find their way a little bit and who they are. But obviously what they lined up and did against DC, they've proven what they're capable of doing. And I say it every week, anybody can beat anybody in this league. Everybody's got talent in this league. It's just morale, attitude, being healthy, continuity, and the development of your football team. And so I think it's a dangerous team. It's an explosive team. They've got an opportunity. They've got an opportunity here in the second half. They went through an awful lot with their coaching staff, and that, when Wade Phillips resigned, they had an interim head coach. Their offensive coordinator left. They had to promote an offensive coordinator. So I think right now their head coach has been there for 2 games. I think they'll probably start to develop a little bit more who they are with his personality. It was the same thing last week. We went into that game and Memphis had a brand new offensive coordinator. So there's some things that you're trying to get ready for that aren't typical in your normal season when you get 5 or 6 games into it. But I think it's a very explosive team, even though their record right now is 1-4. They've lost a couple close games. When you look at the Michigan game, they lose by a field goal. They beat DC. I think it's a very capable team. And what we got to do is, and what I'm most concerned about is just I'm concerned about us. We've got to play our football game, and we've got to get to where we can execute at a little bit higher level and eliminate some of the mistakes. And I think as the year goes on, there's a lot of things that we're getting better at. We don't have as many missed assignments. We're not as penalty driven as we were earlier in the year. There's some things that we're doing better, but we just got to keep improving as we go and try and put our best foot forward. And I'm certainly glad that we have the opportunity to play in Birmingham again, as we've only played 2 of our first 5 in Birmingham, and both of those have been rain games. So
Yeah.
I'm excited to see a nice day and get some people out there and create that home field environment. And I think the people that have showed up have been they've been loud, they've been engaged, they've been into it, and they certainly help us from a morale standpoint. So I encourage everybody, we need your help this weekend. Come on out and support the Stallions.
The good news is the weather forecast does look really nice for Sunday afternoon, Coach, because you're right. It has not been Chamber of Commerce weather for the first 2 games. They're a protective stadium. I did want to ask you.
I was going to say both of them have been, we've gone out for pregame and got soaking wet and then come back in, and it may not have just poured during the game, but there's certainly been a threat of it for the first 2. So excited to have a nice day for Sunday.
No doubt about it. I was going to ask you, you have a very interesting perspective on the spring football that obviously has been trying to catch on. And there's no doubt that this has been the very best product and the best opportunity for the sustainability of a spring product. You were in the USFL, then the merger happened. You've been there, obviously, here for the Stallions since its inception. From a talent standpoint, and you kind of briefly touched on it earlier in the interview, but from a talent-wise, from Team 1 through 8, do you think this is as deep as it's been since you've been involved in spring football with the Stallions?
I do. I certainly, from a talent standpoint, I think you're looking at everybody's roster has talent. You see the defenses have been playing really well. People are playing a lot of man coverage because of the personnel that they have that can do it. I think the game is probably much closer to balance from top to bottom than it's ever been. I think there's some really good football players in this league. There's some really good teams. As I mentioned before, the bottom team can beat the top team, as that's evidence with Memphis beating us last weekend and San Antonio beating DC. I think it just goes to show that maybe year one, people were skeptical of getting into the spring leagues because they weren't sure that they were going to make it. When we completed the first year of the USFL, a spring league had not gone more than 6 games since the 80s. And here all of a sudden we're in year 4. And so I think it's becoming a much more of a viable option for players maybe that have been in the NFL that want to keep their career alive and want to go get more film to continue playing. And I think you're seeing guys that are maybe getting waived from an NFL team that the next week are signing with a UFL team. And so I think it's definitely got a better brand of football. I think it's a high-end football. It's a group of guys that are here for a reason. They want to get film. They want to play. They want to compete. They love the game. They're not here for the money. It's not like they're being paid an exorbitant amount of money for the time, effort, and energy that they're putting into it. I think it is it's a wholesome approach to football, and the guys are here for the love of the game rather than just being here for money or entitlement or all those type of things. So I have really enjoyed the relationship with these players, why they're here. You have a captive audience. They want to be good. They want to be coached. They want to get better because they want to continue playing this game. And so I think it's been a lot of fun for me and something that I have certainly enjoyed.
That is Coach Skip Holtz. You can see him and the rest of the Stallions coming up at 3:00 at Protective Stadium on Sunday. Coach, always appreciate your time. Giddy up. Let's get a win on Sunday, and we'll talk to you next week.
I look forward to it. Thanks, guys. Appreciate you.
Appreciate it. That is Coach Skip Holtz joining us on the Higginbotham Hotline. You deserve solutions that are built for you. Higginbotham is your one-source solution for insurance, financial, and HR services. More three-man front on this Friday. Top of the hour, Mike Rodak will join us in studio from Bama 247. This is Jocks 94.5. Appreciate Skip Holtz joining us each and every week here on the program, an honest assessment of his football team. As he said, they are 3-2. If the playoffs started this weekend, Birmingham's in the playoffs. So the sky is not falling. They have not played sharp offensive football. Defense has played very well. So we'll see what happens this weekend. Birmingham is a 10-point favorite, by the way, against San Antonio.
All righty. And they're 1-4?
Mm-hmm.
They're 1-1 being to – because they have a new coach, too.
Yeah. I also want to point out that Birmingham was an 11.5-point favorite against Memphis last week.
Well.
Just wanted to –
The favorite doesn't always win.
Yeah, that's true.
That is true.
You know, owning a home is great, but it can come with its share of headaches. Some of you out there have foundation issues. Cracks have started showing up at your house. Those doors and windows maybe just won't close right. You can't ignore it because those issues are going to get worse over time. That's why you need to call Alabama Professional Services today at 205-951-9717. It'll be the best decision you've made to protect your home moving forward. APS, will tell you what they're going to do. When you call them, they're going to send a team out. They really know their stuff. They'll inspect everything, and they're going to explain the problem clearly and offer solutions that are tailored to your home. No pressure, just honest advice. They can fix your foundation. They can tackle that sinking driveway with their poly-level system. It's quick, it's clean, and it's going to look fantastic. Plus, they can fix those cracks in your patio from the barbecue season coming up. What will impress you about APS is their professionalism, quality of their work, top-notch products, and service. Call them today at 205-951-9717 or visit their website, alabamaprofessional.com. Trust me, you'll be glad you did. Last night in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, President Donald Trump spoke at the commencement address to the upcoming 2025 Alabama graduates. Also, Nick Saban. And Nick Saban talked about the process. We've heard this a lot throughout time. This is Nick Saban talking to the graduates about what they need to consider moving forward with their careers.
I always tell people that you need to be very wise about the goals that you set. But more importantly, you got to define, what do I need to do to accomplish those goals? That's called the process. The very things that you need to do on a day-to-day basis to be able to accomplish the goals that you have. You need to define that for yourself. And then you have to have the discipline to execute it every day. And I'm talking about self-discipline, because we make hundreds of decisions every day that come down to two questions. Here's something I know I'm supposed to do that I really don't want to do. Can you make yourself do it? On this hand, there's something you know you're not supposed to do, but you want to do it. Can you keep yourself from it? If you can make those choices and decisions the right way, you'll be able to always make progress toward the goals and aspirations and things that you want to achieve.
That was Nick Saban last night talking about the process. He also had a very funny story about when he took one of Alabama's national championship teams down to Washington, D.C., into the Oval Office. Take a listen.
And before I introduce President Trump, I have to tell you a story. You know, you all know that we win a national championship, we get to go to the White House, and it's a great experience for our players and each and every year. When we won in 2017, President Trump was there in 2018, very gracious host, and he's the first president that invited us to come in the Oval Office. So I take the three captains in the Oval Office, and the president's really nice to everybody, and he's got this very big, good-looking, auspicious box on his desk that has a red button on top. And one of the players said, "Is that what you launch the missiles with?" And he said, "Well, push it and find out." Player said, "No, I don't want to do that." He said, "Oh, go ahead, push it, see what happens, find out." So Rashaan Evans finally got the guts up, went over, pushed the red button. Some lady came in with a Coke on a tray. So I really want to express my appreciation to President Trump for choosing the University of Alabama for his commencement address and making time to speak to our graduates. Now it is my distinct honor to introduce our next speaker. Please join me in welcoming the 45th and 47th President of the United States, Donald J. Trump.
That's the way it sounded last night as the President Trump spoke to the upcoming graduates at the University of Alabama. I know many of our listeners, we had Dave from Hoover call us yesterday. He was going down there. I think they had to get in there, Molly, at like 4:30.
I mean, I saw videos on Twitter of all the roads blocked off and all, the motorcycles and all the cars and everything. And I know I have a good friend from Nebraska whose little brother's a senior this year and he's graduating.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously they booked their flights months ago, but they came in this morning. And they're actually kind of glad they did so that they missed all the traffic and everything. Yeah.
All the drama. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because it's something else. Anytime a president comes to your city, you're talking about major roads shut down, no fly zone, things of that nature. So, So the President Trump down in Tuscaloosa, along with Coach Nick Saban last night as they spoke to the graduates. Coming up in just a couple minutes, Mike Rodak is going to join us in studio from Bama 247. Looking forward to this conversation. We're going to go in depth to the Alabama football roster, what it looks like, what's happening with NIL, with Yay Alabama, what's next for Nate Oates and the basketball team as they've had to remake that roster, and just the future of college football, especially in the Southeastern Conference. And oh, by the way, he also covered Bill Belichick for a number of years. Nothing's going on with Bill.
No, nothing at all.
I'm sure Bill Belichick's name won't be brought up with Mike Rodak at all. Maybe he knows Jordan. I don't know. We'll see. I'll ask Mike coming up next. Oh, we've got 2 hours of fun and frivolity with Mike Rodak. Should be a lot of fun coming up next on Three Man Front. Thanks for tuning us in on this Friday. This is Jocks 94.5. It is 12 noon, Jocks 94.5 on this Friday. Thanks for tuning us in. Appreciate everybody that's joined the program so far. We talked to Coach Wimp Sanderson, a very emotional Coach Wimp Sanderson at the beginning of the program. We also talked to Barrett Slee, Skip Holtz, the coach of the Birmingham Stallions. And joining us in studio now, good friend of the program, Mike Rodak from Bama 247, covers the Alabama Crimson Tide. He joins us now in studio. Mike, how's the spring treating you? Everything good?
It's good. This is the beginning of the best time of year for us because there's not a whole lot going on between now and media days. So we get to catch our breath a little bit, and then you sense it by the middle of July, end of July. Like, all right, now it's back to football season. But this is the beginning, so I'm just trying to enjoy it.
You should. All right. So I want to ask you this because you've covered the Buffalo Bills in the NFL, you've covered the New England Patriots in the NFL. And now dealing with the transfer portal in the college game for both basketball and football, do you have like on your desk at home just like a cheat sheet of like the roster and the goings and comings, almost like you did on the transaction wire when you covered an NFL team?
I mean, I have Excel spreadsheets and Word documents and things like that I can pull up in an instant.
I make additions and subtractions as soon as possible.
It's literally within seconds sometimes. As soon as they go into the portal, I'll delete them off my my list. But I like to pride myself on having it all in my head. So, if you ask me to recite every tight end on the roster, I probably could. But it's similar to the NFL. I mean, I'd say the agents, in terms of what they've become in college football and how the news is reported, has swung a lot more towards the agents, which it is in the NFL. I mean, all the Adam Schefters and Ian Rappaports of the world, it's a lot of their agent relationships are what drive the news cycle. And I think that's kind of how it's become in our business too. So that's totally different, even from when I started covering college. That was 6 years ago now. I mean, nobody had agents because you weren't really allowed to.
Sure.
Now everybody has an agent, and that's not unusual or strange at all.
All right, so let's talk about this Alabama football team. How surprised were you that the quarterback room has remained intact through the transfer portal cycle?
Mildly surprised. I do think it speaks, to kind of what Kalen DeBoer has done and his relationships with those players, and there's absolutely something to be celebrated there, for Alabama. And they're the big winners. Alabama, not just a quarterback, but across the entire roster. The team, the program is the big winner because they retain that depth. They have that competition. They have those options to go to. But I think there's also a confidence level among those three quarterbacks. And if you're Austin Mack, I think is obviously the name that we were all watching in terms of would he go into the portal or would he not? It just speaks to his own confidence and his ability to either A, still challenge Ty Simpson for the starting job in August, or B, if he doesn't do that, still be ahead of Keelan Russell. And B is probably the more realistic option for him, is to be the number 2 quarterback ahead of Keelan. And some of that's out of your control because if Keelan develops as they think he will and continues to come along, then it doesn't matter how good you are. Keelan Russell's still going to pass you because of who he is and kind of his recruiting stature. But still, for Austin, if you're able to get into that number 2 role, then you're in the seat. You're in the on-deck circle, basically. If there was an injury to Ty Simpson or if he just didn't play well, all of a sudden you have the opportunity to be the starter at Alabama. So I think there's still enough appeal there, especially when you look at in the spring, you can't go to another SEC school. So what options were there really at the end of April, early May to be a starter and actually play somewhere else? Like, I think you're probably dropping down a level to have that happen. So mildly surprised is where I'd put it, but I think it speaks to not only Alabama's success, but also the confidence of some of the players on the roster in the quarterback room, Austin Mack in particular.
All right, so let's stay with the quarterback room for a second. What impressed you in the spring from that quarterback room, either the three of them, and what maybe gave you a sign of worry in regards to the Alabama offense?
That's a good question. I think in terms of being impressed, I think it's Ty Simpson's ability to just look the part. And I think that's, you're talking about a guy who's in his 4th year now and was pretty highly touted.
If he doesn't look the part by now, he's never going to look the part.
Exactly. Like at some point, like you got to be what everybody expected you to be. And I don't think there's any signs right now that he's not in terms of in the spring on the practice field that he just doesn't look the place of a starting quarterback. He looks out of place. He didn't look, the one practice we got to watch, the A-Day one, didn't make the big mistake, didn't look like he just didn't belong out there. So, that's kind of the starting point for him. And then it's continuing to build on that when you're on the field. And look, for him, you don't have that warm-up game. Like Bryce Young's first start, if I'm not mistaken, was against like Utah State. Or no, sorry, that was against Miami. That was 2021. But Jalen Milrow's first start was against Middle Tennessee State, I think it was a couple years ago. So you don't have that. Last year was Western Kentucky they opened with. Like, no, Ty Simpson, if he's your starter day one, he's walking out there in Doak Campbell Stadium to the tomahawk chop, whatever they call it down there, the Seminole war chant. And like, that's a totally different environment. So, you still don't know how it's going to look in that setting compared to playing in a practice in front of 10,000 people in Bryant-Denny in April, but you at least looked the part. You didn't look out of place. You weren't making any mistakes that were glaring or noticeable when we watched them. So for Ty, I think that's where you want to be at baseline. In terms of what concerns me, I mean, nothing overly obvious right now. I think, look, Keelan Russell coming in as the best recruit in program history puts a lot of expectations on his shoulders. In terms of, program history, we're talking the history.
Is there
of
a
our
comparison when you see him and based on the people, I know you've not been around the program for 20 years,
right?
But the people that you talk to, and whether it's coaches or just people around the program, is there a comparison between Russell and anybody else that's played that position?
I don't know if there's a perfect, in terms of Alabama quarterbacks, I don't know if there's a perfect fit. I mean, he's bigger than Bryce in terms of his stature. Bryce was obviously shorter, but he's lanky like Bryce is. I think that's probably the one area where you would want to see him get bigger. And I'm sure this summer, and
muscle mass
going back to the spring. Yeah, I'm sure getting him plus 10, plus 20 pounds or whatever is going to be a big focus of his offseason going into August. But I don't know if there's a perfect player comparison for him, but it's just you walk in there as the number one overall recruit. And we're in such a day and age in college football where it's very instant gratification. Like everybody wants to see everything right away. And that's not to say like he disappointed anybody, but I don't know if he walked in there in the spring and was like, we need to play this guy right away, which to Ryan Williams' credit, I think that happened last year, wide receiver. He walked in, and that was not even the spring. He was a summer enrollee. He walked in August, like, all right, this guy's going to start day one.
Right.
I mean, he enrolled. His first day at fall camp was August 3rd, and he was starting a month later.
Yeah.
Because that's what he commanded, essentially. So I don't know if it's that situation with Keelan, but I don't know if that's necessarily a bad thing either or a concerning thing. It's just, I don't know if he's going to be the week one starter when I think they were leaving the door open for that. And maybe the door is still open for that, but, there's still rookie moments. We saw them freshman moments, if you will.
Yeah.
I guess I'm stuck on pro football terminology, but we saw some of those on A-Day.
Well, they're now pro football players now. You know that. They're getting paid.
Yeah,
they're professionals.
Absolutely true.
You can say that. All right, so let's talk about some of the weapons that they're going to have at their disposal, whoever the quarterback is. And a lot of people feel really, really good about the wide receiver room, especially with getting Isaiah Horton out of the transfer portal. Talk about Bernard coming back, Williams staying put, and now you add a piece like Isaiah Horton. Is the wide receiver room basically about to get back the way it was 2 or 3 years ago?
About as close as you can get. I mean, I don't know if you're ever going to be able to stack guys like you were. My first year, for instance, I think was 2019, and they had
the Judy Ruggs, the Waddle,
and
Smith,
Devontae Smith, and it's like, you're never going to be able to do that again, because I think Saban's mentioned this too. Like maybe Devontae Smith transfers in a different day and age. If he's at Alabama in the modern era, I don't know if he stays.
I mean, think about it, because you had Isaiah Bond. He transferred after catching the Gravedigger in the Iron Bowl. He was ready to leave.
Yeah.
If Devontae Smith, after he catches the national championship game touchdown against Georgia, he's probably gone.
And people forget, like his freshman year, he wasn't a huge player statistically. Even I think his first 2 years. And it was really towards the end. It was his last year, and his last year of football, 2020, might have been the best individual season I've ever seen out of a player. So I don't know if you're ever able to keep it all together like that, but in terms of what they've kind of brought in, getting Jeremy Bernard to stay, whether it was going to the draft, which I think was a possibility, or maybe he was considering the portal, if we're going to read into the whole Jalen Milroe thing. Getting Ryan Williams, I don't think there was too much of a concern there, but I think having him, Bernard, and then getting Isaiah Horton into that room, it's not like you recruited all those guys and you kept them together for 4 years, but you're doing it kind of the modern way. You brought in Bernard through the portal, you brought in Horton through the portal, you kept your major guy. And then I think the guy that people are forgetting about or not talking about is Rico Scott, to be honest. Because this offense could play 4 receivers a decent amount. I think they did that at Washington. That was where Bernard got on the field as the 4th guy.
Mm-hmm.
And, if they try to open up the passing game a little bit more than what it was last year, then that 4th guy could get, some more looks. So Rico Scott's really right now the 4th man in that room. I know people have high hopes for Jalen Hale. That was a very, very significant injury. And, we'll see if he gets back to what he was before. Obviously, Cole Adams, I think, has a niche role there. Who else am I missing? Oh, Jalen Bakwe, I think, is a 5-star kid everybody knows. I don't know if that transition to wide receivers is going to bear fruit right away. I think that's more of a long-term move. So Rico Scott's really the 4th guy, and I think somebody that people don't really know or talk about as much. But among those 4, you could have the best group in the SEC, maybe the best group in the country. And Horton brings that size that I think
6'4", right?
Yeah, he's big. I mean, we saw him out there at Pro Day,
yeah,
catching passes from Milroe, and he's noticeably bigger than Bernard and Ryan Williams. So that gives you something that you lacked last year, especially with Hale going down. And that's, probably helps you in the red zone, because your red zone offense is going to look a lot different than it was last year. Like it was
not going to be a lot of quarterback runs this year.
And those were automatic. Like, let's not forget, I know people kind of like to slam the door behind Jalen Milroe on his way out, but that was one of the strengths of this team last year.
You're being nice.
I know. Was their red zone ability. Like, you just give the ball to Jalen Milroe, and he's in. And that's something you lose. Now, obviously, maybe you gain something in the passing game, et cetera, but you do lose that aspect of your offense. And so maybe you need to manufacture it with a guy like Isaiah Horton, with his size in the red zone. That's a possibility.
All right, so they went portaling for tight ends because basically they had everybody injured during the spring. I guess they wanted to build up depth there in case those injuries are nagging and you don't have those guys available maybe early part of fall camp. What other areas were you surprised that maybe they didn't kick the tires or maybe go after somebody to provide more depth?
I think the other area where they're kicking the tires was offensive tackle. And that's a tricky one because that's a very in-demand position. Those 6'6", 320
yeah, they're
guys,
just not really available anywhere.
Right. Yeah, they don't grow on trees. That and defensive tackle, like just to find that body type is difficult to begin with. So I think, you like Wilkin Formby in terms of what he brought last year, the growth, having him step into the right tackle role, but I don't necessarily know if you want to rely upon that. So, yeah, I do think there's some level of looking in that market. I do think they were in on, was it Joe Cotton, who ended up going to Cincinnati? They didn't have anybody to leave along the offensive line, so maybe that lessened the need to go and replace them, because, there was speculation maybe about a couple guys along the offensive line possibly leaving, but that didn't happen. So you don't lose anybody. You don't really have to bring in anybody. I think that's just kind of status quo. Like maybe you could have upgraded at offensive tackle, but you have Jackson Lloyd as a freshman who I think is probably going to play sooner rather than later. I don't know if it'll mean playing right away at right tackle this year, but I think you feel good about him. And then you're just trying to figure out Michael Carroll, the other freshman, the 5-star, guard or tackle. What's the best spot for him? So, I think you can get by with Caden Proctor and Wilkin Formby. We'll see how it goes, especially with Formby. But I think you like what you have behind them. And to try to convince a guy to come in and be a backup is also hard to do in the portal era. Like if the guy's in the transfer portal, it's usually because he's not playing enough or he wants a bigger role. So it's hard to convince a guy to say, hey, come in and be our 4th offensive tackle because we need the depth.
Yeah.
Like a guy's just not going to do that.
Yeah. Mike Rodak in studio with us. He'll be with us for the rest of the program. If you have any questions you want to fire in at Mike, 1-800-239-WJOX. The Courtesy GMC text line is open at 205-834-9450. This is Three-Man Front on Jocks 94.5. $12.19, Jackson 94.5. Rare opportunity to talk Alabama football and Alabama basketball with Mike Rodak in studio. So take advantage of it. You have a question, roster question. I mean, this guy knows it like the back of his hand. You can give us a call at 1-800-239-WJOX.
Well, Wallace State softball split a double header with Southern Union yesterday. The win-in game, one clinched the ACCC regular championship. They'll play two more with Southern tomorrow at home in Hanceville. And Wallace Baseball took two from Southern Union in their fourth in a row. They'll also wrap up the regular season tomorrow as they travel to Southern for another twin bill. For more information on the Lions, head to athletics.wallacestate.edu.
All right, so I've got to ask you about the new offensive coordinator at the University of Alabama, Ryan Grubb. Who is this guy? Where did he come from? What's his story?
He's kind of a regular guy from Iowa. He's really the the vibe you get from him. He kind of came up without knowing anybody in the business, which is tough. And I think his story was he was working construction or something like that while he was a high school coach, and essentially got in with it was one coach before Kalen DeBoer, I forget, but he got in with DeBoer eventually. It's kind of a low level guy, and really worked his way up, and still has kind of that chip on his shoulder, the edge, whatever you want to call it.
I enjoyed his 1 month of his prior tenure at Alabama.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It was,
he was undefeated.
He was. So they finally have him now, but yeah, it's definitely, it's a different vibe than Nick Sheridan. Like, I don't want to disparage Nick Sheridan. Nick Sheridan's just a different personality. Ryan Grubb's a lot more relaxed, I think, around us, and we
really. So you're saying that Sheridan was a little bit more, and not being disparaging again, but he was a little bit more
definitely uptight around us.
That surprises me.
And then Ryan Grubb comes.
I thought
out.
it would be the other way around.
No, yeah, Grubb. I mean, the whole press conference from, what was it, right before A-Day? Just kind of, he was cracking jokes with us, and then eventually just randomly.
I love the bombshell at the end.
Just he was waiting on it. It was all planned, but
no,
yeah,
those things happen in Tuscaloosa.
No, never.
Okay,
it's he dropped it on us, and there's just a different personality there with him. And I think Nick is still very well liked with Kalen DeBoer and within obviously the quarterback room and all that. He's very important in bringing in Keelan Russell. But it's just a different vibe, with Ryan Grubb, and he goes back a lot longer with Kalen DeBoer. So,
all right. So let me ask you this, and you're already starting to hear some murmurs out there in regards to, okay, it was not really Kalen DeBoer's offense last year. He was getting by with what he had.
Yep.
So now all of a sudden you've got your OC that help you set records at Fresno, in Seattle. You play for a national championship. Kind of pressures he under? I'm talking about Grubb.
Yeah.
To come in and up the ante from an offensive standpoint, because you didn't have those numbers that you had in the Pacific Northwest.
Right. Yeah. You still have to prove it at this level. And I think it's true for Kalen. It's true for Grubb. Like, what you did in the Pac-12 is still going to be looked at differently compared to what you're doing in the SEC. So, look, I think there's still, maybe we're overrating kind of the passing stats, the pendulum swinging back more towards the pass. I think it will to some extent, but I don't know if this is going to be Washington's offense of 2023 entirely. I still think this, and Grubb talked about this on A-Day as part of their radio broadcast. Like, they still want that identity of Alabama, where historically, early in the Saban years, like, it's smash mouth football, it's beating people, imposing your will. It's about the offensive line, it's about the running game. So I still think there's going to be an element of that. I think Grubb even said some of their best games at Washington were when they were running the ball the best, and not just Penix throwing for 400 yards or whatever it was. So I would be careful to say the pendulum's going to swing totally in that direction of just trying to be, I think they had the second most pass attempts in the country 2 years ago at Washington. And having Ty Simpson be all of that in year one as a starter. Granted, at most he's starting 2 years because he only has 1 year left after this, but it's going to be somewhere in the middle to me. And I still think they want to use Jam Miller. I still think they like Richard Young as the number 2 running back, and they like their offensive line. So we'll have to see what exactly it looks like. It's going to be different than last year, but it could be different than Washington as well.
Joined by Mike Rodak in studio talking Alabama's athletics, whether it's football. We'll get into some basketball talk in just a couple of minutes. The staff retention at Alabama, it's something under Nick Saban. You literally, kind of like the transfer portal, it was changing every year. Mm-hmm. It was almost a full staff. You got different coordinators left and right. How surprised that Kane Womack on the defensive side of the ball, because I think he had a couple of opportunities perhaps to leave Tuscaloosa, and he stayed put. How important do you think it is in Kalen DeBoer's second year that he has that staff retention? Yeah,
I think that's at baseline kind of what you will talk about for any second-year coach. I think that's usually their story, and not just in this case, but, I remember I've covered 3 different coaches in Buffalo in their second year. I think it was the same thing every second year. It's like, continuity. We have everybody back, etc. So, that applies here. You're right. I think for Kane, he had already left the South Alabama job, which was a head coach at the group of 5, soon to be group of 6 level. And that's probably where, if he had other opportunities, that's kind of what you'd be looking at again. So given that he already left that to go be a coordinator again, I think you're doing that with the expectation of waiting on a bigger job, a head coaching job to come about. And, there's obviously results that will need to show on his end as well. I think the Vandy game was obviously the low point for that defense last year. But then after that, they looked a lot different, the last 6-7 games of the year. So if they can continue that and he has a very veteran, capable group coming back, where does that put him next offseason in terms of potentially being a head coach somewhere else? But Ryan Grubb's the same thing. Like we just talked about, if you prove yourself and you're the quarterback doctor that, makes Ty Simpson into the 5-star prospect that he was, then what opportunities come your way? Because that's something else he said is like, I had other options this offseason when he got fired by the Seahawks. And that might have explained a pretty long delay before he was actually named the offensive coordinator here. So, what happens with Ryan Grubb after next year? So, yeah, you have the continuity this year. If you have success this year, I don't know if that's going to last into a third year.
Yeah.
If you don't have success this year, then there's potentially bigger issues. So it's, it's probably an overused term, but it's a pivotal year in that regard, I'd say.
Speaking of pivotal years, and you cannot hide from the fact that Alabama did not win 10 ball games.
Mm-hmm.
And the losses were bad losses. Not like you lost on a Hail Mary.
Nope.
We're talking about didn't even get off the bus type losses.
Yep.
And that's something that for 17 years you did not see at the University of Alabama. What is the patience level for Kalen DeBoer? And is there a number that we're having a conversation a year from now if they don't get to that number this year in year 2?
I think 10 is the number that will make people happier.
Happier.
I don't know. Again, to be truly happy here is you're holding up the trophy at the end of the year. And it is what it is. Like, that's what it is here. I think if you're a 9-win team again, you're probably missing the playoffs unless something weird happens. So look, I think the patience level is probably is going to outpace what the realistic opportunities are, because if you're trying to think about getting rid of Kalen DeBoer after 2 years, the buyout number is huge. You're talking like $70 million. So that money just doesn't come from thin air, and your budget's already stretched because you're trying to implement the House settlement and trying to find $20 million a year to pay players. So that money's not coming from within necessarily. You're hard stretched to make that happen. So it's coming from somebody else. And who are those somebody else's that are paying out of their own pockets to make a switch after 2 years? So your patience level might not be great if you're talking about another 9-8 win season or something like that. But realistically, can you do something about it after year 2? I think is, if you're talking, worst case scenario, what happens? I don't know if anything happens.
Well, that's interesting because I think a lot of people automatically think, okay, well, if you don't win in year 2, you're gone. Hit the road. And it was almost a situation where now these athletic departments have to think long and hard before you go ahead and pull the trigger on this, because the buyouts are so outlandish. Maybe 5 to 10 years ago, okay, we'll get a couple guys to write that check, but you're also going to those big boosters, asking them to write big checks to retain Ryan Williams and go get a quarterback or whatever the case may be. It's just, you can't get rid of them anymore.
It's a big bill because you're not even considering, in that case, the assistant coaches. If you're getting rid of Kalen DeBoer, then you're probably getting rid of Ryan Grubb and maybe his whole staff.
Yeah, they're not making chopped liver down there.
There's 5 coaches right now, assistant coaches, that are making more than $1 million a year. And that's just this 1 year. And a lot of those, in fact, all of them are under contract through at least 2026, some of them 2027. So you'd be talking about getting rid of their contracts and their buyouts, and maybe it gets offset somewhere else. And then, yes, you're talking about a portal opening. You're talking about trying to retain your best players. You're trying to have new players come in. You're talking about losing commitments. Not that you have a lot. You only have 5 for the upcoming class, but then getting new commitments to come in, and all these things literally cost money. So the bill is big for a decision like that. Could it be worth it? Maybe. But again, I think the patience level is probably going to outpace some of the realistic things you can do about it.
That is Mike Rodak joining us until 2 o'clock here in studio. We'll discuss the basketball situation. It appears that they still got a roster spot or two, perhaps, that they could add. What's the current standing of that roster for Nate Oates, where that team is going to look like this next season? All that next on 3-Man Front. .34 Jocks 94.5 on this Friday. Appreciate Mike Rodak hanging out with us on this Friday. Talked a lot the first 30 minutes in regards to the Alabama roster and what to expect coming up for 2025. Let's talk a little hoops. Let's talk basketball because there have been some rumors of Rylan Griffin maybe coming back out of the transfer portal. I think 247 Sports, you guys have been reporting that it looks like now he might be heading to Texas A&M to play for Bucky?
Yeah, that's the crystal ball that was put in last night by Travis Branham, who does our national college basketball recruiting and portal. So kind of a drawn out recruitment for Rylan Griffin. I mean,
and if I'm not mistaken, so you had Kentucky kick the tires on him.
Mm-hmm.
You had Missouri,
Yep.
I heard, came in late. They were very interested. Alabama, and it appears now he's heading to Texas A&M.
A&M. Yeah, it's just a little bit bizarre because there was talk even in March, like when they were still playing, could Rylan Griffin leave Kansas and come back? And
was it a pure money grab for him going to Lawrence? And I'm not saying that ugly because I would have done the exact same thing, but his numbers at Kansas this year were putrid,
right,
compared to what they were in Tuscaloosa.
Yeah, I'm sure it played a big role, as it does for a lot of guys. And, I
just didn't know if it was one of those conversations after the season where, you start kind of playing things out for the 2024-25 Alabama Crimson Tide, and maybe Nate Oates said, all right, Ryland, here's the way it's looking for playing time and et cetera. And
yeah, I would have to go back and think of the exact timeline, because I know Wrightso made his decision. You brought in Houston Millett. You brought in Chris Youngblood. When Rylan went into the portal, I'd have to remember the exact
and with Phylon coming on
sequence of
board.
events. Yeah, Phylon came in. So at the end of the day, like if it was plan A for Nate Oates to bring in Rylan Griffin and it was plan A for Rylan Griffin to come back to Alabama, it would have happened a long time ago. The fact that it was so drawn out and it always seemed to be on the back burner, I think says something. So it clearly wasn't plan A. And that's, it's for him, it's his last year of eligibility. Like he's a senior this year. It's his last chance to become the NBA sort of prospect that I think he showed flashes of at Alabama. So that could be a good system for him to do it in, Bucky's system. And not that it's, again, I don't know if it was like a true all in poker chip sort of competitive situation between Alabama and A&M, but I do think it speaks a little bit to, there's more competition to Alabama's style of play now. That there probably was 4 or 5 years ago, because there's more coaches with that style at this level. There's a Kevin Young at BYU is one that I can think of that runs an NBA system. And that's a guy that, Nate Oates has talked to and learned from. Bucky McMillan is a guy who, Nate has talked about in the past. And there's more teams running that style, and that creates competition in the marketplace that, it changes your pitch a little bit, because if you're at Alabama and your biggest pitch to guys is, we're going to develop you to become an NBA player because that's our system. Well, other places can say the same thing. And, I think the other thing for Alabama is, like, we know they're not going to be paying the most for basketball players. And in the current NIL system, that has not been the case. I think every player on the roster last year probably could have made more money someplace else.
Even Amori. Yeah, because Amori, I think North Carolina was willing to pay him a lot more than he made in Tuscaloosa.
Right. And that's honestly probably going to be even more pronounced in revenue sharing, because you have $20 million per athletic department. And the schools that don't have football are going to benefit. The Big East schools, essentially. St. John's probably had the best offseason of any team in the country this year. And they're able, I don't know if they're going to have the full $20 million in revenue to distribute, but they're still probably going to have more than a lot of SEC teams, because you're not trying to split it up with football.
Right.
And if you have that big budget, and for some teams it's been over 10 million in NIL and revenue sharing this year. Next year, if you're talking just revenue sharing, a team like St. John's could still be well over 5 million. That's hard to compete with. And it's probably also true, not just for the Big East schools that don't have a football program, but for the schools that have a football team that's second fiddle.
Right.
North Carolina, Duke, Kansas.
So in other words, you're
Indiana.
trying to tell me your alma mater like Providence, they would probably be better suited from a basketball standpoint, because they're not having to divvy out that money from a football standpoint.
In fact, I get one of those alumni updates. I don't know if I can pull it up, but it basically talked about, here's what's going to happen with the house settlement. Like, we're waiting for it. Like, it was very anticipatory. Like, we can't wait until this happens at a school like Providence, because that allows them to get a leg up over football schools. So it's going to be interesting to see how that works out long term for schools that have basketball and football to worry about within that 20 million, especially for the schools where football is as important as it is at Alabama and Auburn and Texas and Florida and places like that. Can the basketball teams compete with the Kansas and North Carolina and Duke, Kentucky, Louisville, the Big East schools that they're willing to put more money into basketball out of that 20 million? That's going to be a question. So that plays into the whole conversation I was just talking about with Nate Oates. And if you have more competition among other teams because of your style, you're not able to pay players as much as other teams, that puts you in a tough spot. And I think your biggest selling point the last couple of years was we put more guys into the NBA than anybody else. And you could sit down and show them a PowerPoint. And this is what Nate does. That there's literally a PowerPoint presentation. And Kyra Lewis, Herb Jones, Noah Clowney, Brandon Miller. There's one I'm forgetting off the top of my head, but you had that stretch, Josh Primo. You had that stretch of NBA players in a pretty short amount of time. And that's some of that momentum's been lost the last couple of years. And I do wonder how much that is kind of impeding your pitch when you have like a Grant Nelson who made that decision to come from North Dakota State at the time, pulled out of the draft. He was probably a second round pick 2 summers ago. And the whole thing was he's going to come to Alabama. He's going to play in this system. He's going to shoot more threes. He's going to show the NBA that he can be that 30, 35, at least % 3-point shooter that he wasn't at North Dakota State. And it just never happened. And that expectation of him moving from second round pick to first round pick didn't happen. And now it's not even likely or probable he's a second round pick. He's probably going undrafted in the draft next month. So that one kind of stung in terms of kind of continuing that momentum. It actually might help if Philon stays in the draft and he goes higher than people expect. That allows you to put that name on the board and say, hey, we pulled in LeBaron Philon out of Kansas, essentially, and we turned him into a first-round pick in 1 year.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's going to happen. He's probably more of an early second-round pick, but you just kind of need more examples. And I know it's like, man, it's only 3 years ago that Noah Clowney was coming in and turned into a first-round pick, but things has changed so much. And I think you need to keep that momentum going with the draft. And I don't know if it has quite been there the last couple of years for Alabama.
All right, so you just mentioned Philon. All indications, he, just like Tahad Pettiford down at Auburn. Now, you talk to Auburn people, Auburn, they feel like he will be coming back to Auburn, and maybe it's a financial situation with him. What are you hearing on Philon in regards to his draft stock? He'll go through all the combine and get all the information. He did, I think, a podcast here recently, and he basically mentioned that he's still 100% focused on the NBA draft, but kind of left that door kind of cracked a little bit.
A little bit, yeah. It was interesting. And it wasn't just what he said. It was also kind of his facial expression when they asked him the follow-up question of, are you retaining your eligibility and could you come back? And I know I'm on the radio, but he was kind of like, It was not the most convincing facial expression that would say,
yes, I'm coming back to T-Town.
I think he was just kind of saying it, is my read on it. I think I said it was kind of an ambiguous answer. There's multiple ways to interpret what he said. My gut feeling, just from having been in this business for 15 years and listened to guys talk, like, I did not get the sense that's a guy who seriously is considering coming back. Maybe keeping that door open if absolutely in case of emergency and you have a really bad combine or you get injured or something. But I think chasing his dream is really what the general message was in that podcast. And he said it's not about the money for him. He said it's about he wants to become an NBA player. And so I don't know if that changes next year. I think you're probably in a similar spot. Maybe you can become a first-round pick, but if you feel like you can get drafted in the second round and you feel like you're chasing your dream, then that accomplishes that goal this year for you. So my gut feeling says no, he doesn't come back. But again, I think he's leaving that door open just in case of emergency.
All right, so let's assume that he's gone.
Mm-hmm.
And based on what they've been able to, from the transaction wire, bring in from the transfer portal, your best guess right now, can they add 1, 2 more pieces. What's it look like from a roster standpoint?
Yeah, so they're at 11 right now. I mean, it used to be the limit was 13.
Mm-hmm.
Now with the House settlement, that's going to 15 in terms of a roster limit, and you can have 15 scholarship players if you want. There was some talk at one point of the SEC doing its
limiting
own
that
13, yeah, like they did in football for this
Mhm.
year. It's going to be 85 from the SEC. NCAA limit is 105. I don't think that's going to happen in basketball. Is kind of the latest word there. So, yes, in theory, you could bring in 15 scholarship players. I don't think any team's going to do that. I don't think any team is realistically going to be able to do that because you're playing 9 guys, and once
tough to keep 15 guys happy.
Right. Yeah. You're not just going to have a bunch of guys sitting on your bench that are scholarship players that are legitimate talents that are just willing to do that for a whole year. So if you end up with 11 or 12, and there was a couple of years ago where they only had 12 scholarship players. And quite frankly, last year, once Latrell Wrightsell went down and Millette was redshirted and Nas Cunningham was redshirted, I mean, you're working with 10 guys. So I don't know if you even need to add anybody from right now. I think 11 is fine. If you want to bring in somebody from a lower level school through the portal that is willing to know that they're not going to play this year, that adds another body into the room. That's fine. But I think your team as it's constructed is probably what your team is going to be. And that, look, I think Aiden Holloway is going to be a very important player this year. Probably at point guard. Latrell Wrightsell is another option to play the point. Jalil Bethea from Miami is a very high ceiling player. And then Houston Millette is coming into your backcourt as well. So that's 4 guys for 2 or 3 spots in your backcourt. I don't know if you need Phylon to come back or if he doesn't come back that you need to bring in somebody else. I think you could find room for Phylon in that backcourt if he does come back. But again, the portal at this point is pretty much picked over. There's some high-level guys left, but I think those guys are all looking at the NBA. So, your options aren't great, but I think what you have in your backcourt is good enough.
Yeah.
Especially if Holloway does what he did at his highest level last year. I think you're looking at major minutes for him. Really, the big question for me is health. Because Latrell Wrightsell is coming off of a pretty major injury, one that he said he didn't know that he would be able to come back from. And he also has that history of concussions. And that's probably the more alarming thing, just because that next hit that he takes, the next collision in practice, next collision in the game, what does that mean for his status? That's always the tough part about those sort of injuries. So, what's going to happen with him? Houston Millette had the knee injuries. Is he fully healthy? And
so plenty of interesting questions moving forward.
It's a high ceiling roster. If Bethea becomes the player that he was coming out of high school, that's a top 10 prospect right there. You're talking about a first round NBA talent. But if he doesn't live up to that, if Wrightsell gets hurt, if Millette gets hurt,
right.
It's the floor is a lot lower. So I don't want to say boom or bust, but it's a roster that has a pretty wide spectrum of outcomes.
That is Mike Rodak. He will continue to be with us until 2 o'clock. This is 3-Man Front on Jocks 94.5. 1252 Jocks 94.5 coming up on this program with Mike Rodak and Molly Robinson. Next hour, we're going to get into this Bill Belichick drama. I think Mike has an opinion or two of covering the old ball coach up there in Foxborough for a little bit. Also, we'll do some Pat Ponders. We're going to make Mike Rodak go through the grind of 5 questions that I come up with.
Can't wait.
I know. He's having lunch and getting ready. Being fired up.
Thanks to McDonald's for the chicken strips.
Absolutely. The new chicken strips from McDonald's bringing us lunch. How are they, Molly?
Oh, they were delicious.
Fantastic.
Yeah, they were great.
Good deal.
Well, this Mother's Day, celebrate your mom's love, strength, and beauty with a lasting piece she'll cherish for a lifetime and even pass it down to your children at Diamonds Direct. Whether her style is classic, modern, or somewhere in between, you will find the perfect piece, from diamond stud earrings to elegant pendants, and believe me, so much more. Also, Diamonds Direct can help you create the perfect personalized gift for your mother as well. Also, every piece comes with complimentary cleaning, sizing, and repairs too. So why not check out Diamonds Direct if you're looking special for your mom this Mother's Day? No one does it like Diamonds Direct.
All right, so you covered the NFL. And before we get into the Belichick stuff, I wanted to ask you about Jalen Milroe. How shocked were you that he went where he went and Shedeur Sanders was picked after Jalen Milroe?
Not shocked about Milroe going where he went. More surprised about Shedeur, but you can also see where teams probably didn't want to deal with the Deion show, if you will. If things did not go well, would Deion start talking, etc. Different situation, but we saw that with Colin Kaepernick, where maybe the player himself was worthy of a roster spot, but the teams just didn't want to have that around, especially as a backup. Again, two different situations, but I think the same general line of thinking where NFL teams are just allergic to anything that's not football. So not surprised with Jalen, because that's kind of where people expected him to go coming into the year. I remember I talked to a GM in September before the Georgia game and asked him, like, where do you have Jalen? 3rd round. Maybe an early day 3 pick. If he gets better, maybe he's a 2nd round, late 1st round type of guy. That was kind of the consensus for him. And then it seemed to shift a little bit right before the draft to where people were talking about him early in the 2nd round. I don't know how much of that had to do with the NFL inviting him to the draft. And that's the biggest surprise to me, is that they invited him.
That made no sense to me whatsoever.
Right. And you would have to think the NFL runs that by college scouting directors, GMs, whoever, to make that list. So what information were they getting? Was it bad information? I don't know. I don't know what happened there.
And at the end of the day, it looked better for Shedeur Sanders to be at his house in Texas, albeit there were cameras that were in his face the whole time he was not being picked.
Right.
But still, getting that invite, I mean, we talked about it on the show. We're like going, hold on a second. Like, somebody's got to be telling Jalen Milroe's people, look, this is the information.
This is not smart, yeah.
But
again, players have confidence. I talked about it with Austin Mack. Like, there's self-confidence a lot of players have, and you give them that opportunity and they'll take it because they're never going to sell themselves short, essentially. So, and there's been years, I feel like, I would have to go back and check. I think the NFL's had a separate group of players for night 2 that they think might be 2nd round picks. And maybe that's the way of doing it, but that wasn't the case here. That was a group of 15 players they thought were 1st round picks. The only 2 that weren't picked were Jalen Milroe and Will Johnson. And Will Johnson was very much a medical thing, and he ended up getting picked in the 2nd round, the Michigan corner. And then, Milroe goes all the way to 92 in the 3rd round, and not surprising to me because I think that's a 3rd round type of player. That's traditionally in the NFL. It's a player that has a lot of traits that you like to see. Obviously, we know what they are with Jalen, but has question marks, and we know what they are with Jalen as well. So I don't know. We'll see how it works for him. I did an interview in Seattle on their radio, and they seem to be very hopeful. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, based on the podcast that I heard, or the interview from Kalen DeBoer and the host, they were, hopeful is operative word there.
Basically.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. Mike Rodak, Bama 247, joins us for the rest of the show. We will ask him about Bill Belichick next hour, do some Pat Ponders, all that straight ahead. This is Three Man Front. One o'clock here on Three Man Front. Pat Smith, Molly Robinson, Mike Rodak from Bama 247 joining us. Great information. If you missed the last hour, we'll have that up on our podcast momentarily. Just a deep dive into the Alabama football and basketball roster and what to anticipate moving forward. We're just a couple months away from SEC football media days. Where do you think, or where do you foresee Alabama? Again, the media poll means absolutely nothing, but it's talking season. We like to at least, think about it or time or two. What do you think Bama will be when it's all said and done?
I think 3 or 4, which is where they were last year. Remind me of where they were last year. I think it was 3 is where they got picked. But I think that's generally where I'd have them again. I think Georgia and Texas, or Texas and Georgia, maybe in that order. I feel like are going to be higher. I do think Alabama's still viewed as a top 10 team nationally.
Bama was 3, Ole Miss 4.
Okay, yeah, and so that's probably the debate for me again. Where's Ole Miss? Where's Bama? You have a lot of teams that are replacing quarterbacks. I think Texas is probably in the best spot to do that because of Arch and kind of the positivity around him. Ole Miss replacing Jackson Dart, Georgia replacing Carson Beck, Alabama replacing Jalen Milroe. You're just trying to figure out where those quarterbacks are against each other. And then you have the wild cards like LSU that had great portal hauls that have a returning quarterback in Garrett Nussmeier, who's viewed as a first-round pick next year. Tennessee probably gets knocked down a notch because of the Nico thing. Not that they downgraded a lot, but I don't know if they're a top 4 or 5 team. So, South Carolina, I think will be in the top 6.
A lot
7.
of love for them.
Right. Lenore Sellers is getting a lot of first round attention. That's a tough game for Alabama. Probably their second toughest game after going to Georgia, to me, going to Columbia in October. So, yeah, they'll probably in the top 6. It's somewhere in that range, but I think for Alabama, 3 or 4, right in the conversation there with Ole Miss is where I'd put them.
It'll be interesting because you mentioned South Carolina. I think Auburn is going to get a lot of love, which they should, based on their roster.
Top 8 somewhere, top 9.
Yeah. So we'll wait and see. The other big story in sports has been Bill Belichick. And you covered Bill Belichick. You covered the New England Patriots. How many years on that beat?
3 years, 2010 through 2012.
Pretty good years.
Yeah, not as good as they could have been.
They're pretty good.
They were good. They went to 1 Super Bowl in that time, which is not up to their standard at that particular era.
No. But so I've come up with 10 quick questions for you. Now, this isn't Pat Ponders. We'll do that a little bit later. But this basically is, I want your quick, instantaneous reaction and your, 2 or 3 sentence thoughts on this. Okay. All right. Question number 1. Nice music, Molly.
Felt fitting.
It did fitting. Careless whisper there. When North Carolina inked Belichick to a $50 million deal, did the school realize that they had signed up for this drama?
Yes, because it had already been out there. And I think it was not anything new. So I think they knew what they're getting into there.
Question number 2. Does North Carolina's sports information team find out about this stuff instantaneously, or are they given a heads up?
I would guess instantaneously. Just from knowing people in that business, they often, sometimes they find out when we find out.
That's always fun.
Put it mildly.
Question 3. Why reject North Carolina being the subject of Hard Knocks if things are going to be a reality show anyway?
Because I think they wanted to control the NFL films.
Would not give them control.
Would not give Jordan Hudson control, because by all reports, she wanted to be an executive producer and have that sort of label, which a lot of people would say no to on principle.
Question 4. Is this all a ruse? Is this a marketing campaign for Belichick's new book, The Art of Winning?
No, but I don't think it hurts either. I mean, would we have heard of the book if this was not all out there? No, I think it's getting more pub than it ever would have. So all news is good news, I suppose.
As we continue this line of questioning to Mike Rodak about this Bill Belichick situation, is his girlfriend, Hudson, is she a lock to win Miss Maine in 2 weeks?
Ooh, I don't have that on my DraftKings app. I might have to look deeper into that.
We need to find odds for that, Pat.
Oh, I'm sure there will be odds.
We need to.
I used to vacation up in Maine as a kid. Old Orchard Beach.
Did you? Have you ever been to Hancock County?
Not that I can remember.
She's Miss Hancock.
She's Miss Hancock.
Do you see what her
Miss
mom
Maine.
does? Did you read it?
That was a
yeah.
segment on the show yesterday.
All right.
It was more than a segment. We had a good
Hey,
time
you're a
with that.
New England guy. Have you been to P-Town?
I have not. It's way, way out there. It's way at the end of the Cape. So it's like a long, long drive.
Do the locals call it P-Town?
Yes, definitely P-Town.
But you've never been to the museum?
I have never been to that museum. I think the furthest out I've been on the Cape is the Elbow, Chatham.
Okay, so when you say like way out there.
Oh, yeah. It's way out there.
More ways than one. That was my words, not Mike's, by the way. All right, so she's not a lock for Miss Maine, you don't think?
I'd have to check the competition.
Now, keep in mind, this is not Miss America.
Right.
This pageant is...
This is Miss USA.
Yeah, Miss USA.
Miss USA,
Yes.
but it's only for Maine.
Correct. So
Okay.
the winner of Miss Maine
Goes
will then
on to
compete
Miss USA.
Miss USA.
Because now Trump used to own
He
Miss
used to own-
America.
I
right?
think Miss America.
I did not know that, but
See, we educate on this show, Mike.
Yeah.
Maine's a small enough state where I'll say sure.
That she'll win.
Yeah, I'll say it in a little bit of a Canadian accent too, because that's how they talk in Maine.
Well, they're basically Canadians.
Basically Canadian.
Yeah. All right. Next question. How many offers have there been from streaming services to stream the Miss Maine pageant?
Ooh, multiple. I mean, that's a wise investment. If you're a business development VP somewhere for one of those places, all in on that. All in. That's a good idea.
Question number 7 for Mike Rodak. Does We're Not Talking About This get a trademark application like Do Your Job?
Probably. That's a good idea as well. If you're a general counsel for Belichick Productions, which
I mean,
again,
she has papered the copyright office in Washington, D.C. from Chapel Bill to what was some of the other ones?
So one of them was Saving Miss Daisy. And a lot of them were the old Patriots ones, but just trademarked with Bill's Virgin to make them.
The hustle is real. If you're in
North Carolina.
that line of work, why not? You know, I'd say go for it. That's
Can't
my
forget about
professional
Chapel
advice.
Bill.
Question number 8. Who was more of an internet main character this past weekend? Was it Hudson on Sunday or Mel Kiper Jr. all weekend?
More of a main character. I would say Hudson. Yeah, I feel like that transcends sports. Although then again, Shadur was being talked about in the White House press briefing, but I feel like Jordan Hudson has broken the walls down. It's not just about college football. It's not just about whatever. It's a national story that all sorts of writers are trying to get in on.
Molly, you're really digging this Careless Whisper.
I love this song.
Question number 9. How many games does Belichick need to win for everyone to find this quirky, not a distraction?
10.
10?
Good answer.
Wow.
Yeah. No, I mean, you're not making the playoffs in the ACC, which probably means you need to win the ACC. Then what are you doing this all for? It's not like he has like a long runway.
That's
like,
true.
yeah, I can get this done in 3 years. I'm going to get North Carolina to the playoffs. Like, brother, you're going to be 75 and she's going to be like 22 in 3 years. So like, you don't have that amount of time. Like, this has to be a win now thing for North Carolina.
That was Mike Rodak from the top. All right, final question. Will any of this, Mike, help get Bill Belichick back on the radar for a head coaching job in the National Football League?
No, it is. It's so far off the radar. I mean, think of Spaceballs when the radar gets jammed. It's like literally jam on it. Just the radar is just gone. It's gone.
There's no chance.
No. You talk about NFL teams not wanting to deal with things. They already did not want to deal with Bill Belichick and what he was at New England for 20 years that Robert Kraft put up with. And then you add this on top of that, which is just the antithesis of everything that he was always about. Whew. I don't see it happening at all. And then you add, again, his age. I just don't see any chance of that happening.
So he's done.
I think he's done.
Done in the NFL.
Yep.
I want to get back to that first question, though, is seriously about North Carolina being a very buttoned up. We had a reporter on yesterday who told us that they are the wine and cheese crowd.
Yeah.
Talking about North Carolina fans. And for Bill Belichick to come down there and have to deal with this drama, like.
Yeah, I mean, it's been out there with her for a while. It goes back to at least last summer. And I think it was Pro Football Talk pretty early in this whole North Carolina thing. It was before any of this stuff. Was talking about some of the uneasiness there about the hiring process. And I want to say that maybe Bubba Cunningham wasn't on board. I feel like I've read that. I don't cover them.
He was kind of overruled.
Right. He was kind of overruled. I remember reading that somewhere. I don't cover them, so I can't speak directly on it, but I feel like there was a level of discomfort from the beginning.
Yeah.
And again, you kind of know, you need to know what you're signing up with Belichick to begin with. And you add this whole situation on top of it. I don't know where his mind's at.
I think we know where his mind is, Mike.
I think we know.
He's doing Pilates on the beach.
Yes, very, very much so. I want to get back to this P-Town.
It's a solid 2 hours out there. 2-hour
really?
drive. Well, yeah, you have to go over the bridge. There's the Bourne Bridge and the Sagamore Bridge.
Is that the Chappaquiddick Bridge?
That is down. That's the Ted Kennedy one. That's Martha's Vineyard, which is an island. And
See, I've been there, but I've never been to P-Town.
That's where Jaws was, right?
I think so, yeah, Chappaquiddick. But yeah, you have to go over, there's only 2 bridges from mainland Massachusetts onto Cape Cod. And Memorial Day weekend, 4th of July, like, there's
crazy.
no worse place to be on earth than the bridges and the rotaries. So we call them roundabouts here. Like they're doing the 2 new roundabouts in Mountain Brook.
Yeah.
In Massachusetts, we call those rotaries.
Rotaries.
So there's rotaries on either side of the bridges, and those get just insanely backed up in the summer.
I want you to be completely honest with this next question. As a college student at Providence College, home of the Friars, did you ever consider going to the museum in P-Town?
I wish I knew about the museum in P-Town.
Well, now you know.
Now you know.
Now I know about it. I guess I missed out back then.
Do you guys have like alumni weekends and you can go visit?
See, the biggest thing about this is like Belichick's not a Cape Cod guy. He's a Nantucket guy. Like that's
Is he?
You're talking
Okay.
about the wine and cheese crowd. Like
That's wine and
the
cheese.
elite of the elite.
Yeah.
Like you don't mess around. If you're going to Nantucket,
So if you've got real money,
oh yeah,
like disgusting money,
he has
you
a
go
house
to
on Nantucket.
Nantucket.
And you don't even bother with the Cape. You don't even bother with the bridges. You take a plane to Nantucket.
Oh.
So the fact that he's messing around with someone who's involved with the Cape and Provincetown that's the biggest headline there.
Now,
to me.
when you covered him in 2010 through 12, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Was he married to his kid's wife?
Not anymore.
Okay.
I think that ended probably almost 20 years ago.
Okay.
But I think
Was he seeing the one that he just broke up with?
Linda Holiday? That was the beginning of it. I think it was in between 1 and 2 for him.
Because, I mean, they were together for like 15, 16 years.
I mean, was there any talk
yeah.
of like Bill being out on the town, like seen with someone on his arm or anything like that?
No, because that was when he was still like Saban. Like he was locked in every single day. There was the 1 month he would be in Nantucket, but that was like nose to the grindstone sort of period of his life. And I think he's kind of drifted away as he's gotten a little bit older. And you can sense like he's trying to do the things that he missed out on when he was so devoted and committed to football
when he was
for
24.
so long. Yeah, it's not even a midlife crisis. It's like a later life crisis in his case. But when he coached in the NFL for 50 years, like that sort of schedule, especially when you're in the Saban tree, or Saban's really in his tree, like you're in the same Parcells mindset, you're not spending time outside of football other than 1 month of the year.
The conversation that I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall is when Nick Saban came home and told Miss Terry, "You will never believe what Bill is up to."
I want to know how he found out. That would be I honestly thought about this the other day. Like, what if somebody asked Saban about that? Like the region's golf tournament coming
Absolutely.
up. For Josh Maxson listening, I'm not asking that question if I'm there. But I'm just thinking hypothetically, if somebody asked Nick Saban,
that sounds like a Conrad question. We'll send Conrad out there. And
what do you
Conrad
think
will
of
ask the
Bill
question.
Belichick? First of all, you know that whatever he says is going to be all over the internet.
It will
in
be
some
viral
form.
in a heartbeat.
But if you're Nick Saban and you're answering that question, I think you're just like, I really respect Bill and his personal life.
This is personal life.
Right.
Right.
But what does Nick Saban truly think? Man, I don't know.
I could just hear it. Can you hear Miss Terry?
Right.
Like him coming home and go, can you believe that that Bill is seeing a 24-year-old?
Just later life crisis is what I come back to.
So this is a text that we got from earlier that I kind of put in the back pocket for this conversation. What do you think Jordan and Miss Terry talk about when they join Nick and Bill at the lake house for a weekend?
Ooh. What do you think, Mike? You covered both.
Right. The media.
You're probably right.
I can probably find some common ground on that one.
Well, I think what happens is Nick has his daughter make sure she's around.
Yeah, that would
be an interesting.
Relatively the same age, but
How old is Nick's daughter? How old is she now?
30s, I think.
Early 30s?
Yeah. I think they could probably, Bill would be complaining if that email that Jordan put on Instagram the other day was truly Bill Belichick's words. He'd probably be complaining about the media twisting his words and taking him out of context. And I'm sure Nick would have some similar thoughts and they could jibe on that idea. But again, I just don't see Nick in his heart of hearts thinking that this is a good situation for Bill Belichick.
No, we'll see how that affects the University of North Carolina. Well, do something about that tree before it falls on your house. Call Golston Tree Service today at 205-337-4018. Operated by a certified arborist, Golston Tree Service. They can handle the little jobs like trimming hedges to shaping trees, hazardous jobs like line clearance, and the best part, they got that 24-hour emergency storm service. So we're supposed to get some bad storms later this afternoon and tonight and tomorrow. And if you need help overnight, you need to call Golston Tree Service, 205-337-4018. More three-man front on this Friday. This is Jocks 94.5. 122 Jocks 94.5. I am just quizzing Mike during the break about P-Town. I'm just fascinated about P-Town.
I kind of want to go. Not to the museum.
Kind of want to go.
But I want to go to P-Town.
No, we know where you want to go.
I don't.
We know where you want to go. Come on. You can catch the Braves tonight at 6 o'clock right here on Jocks 94.5. They start a 3-game series with the Los Angeles Dodgers. Right-handed pitcher Grant Holmes on the bump against Yoshi Yamamoto, who has the best ERA in all of baseball. So it is interesting that a story came out earlier this week, and I wanted to get your thoughts on this, Mike. Mike Rodak joins us from Bama 247 here in studio. And it has to do with a story that Kirk Bowles wrote in the Houston Chronicle.
Yep.
I've known Kirk for a very long time. He has covered Texas Longhorns for over 50 years. He went to the University of Texas. He now, long time at the Austin American-Statesman. Now he's at the Houston Chronicle. He reported that the football team's roster at Texas is going to be anywhere between $35 and $40 million for this upcoming season. Now, that includes the revenue the school was going to be able to share once the House settlement becomes official. In 2023, according to Kirk, Texas was second in athletics revenue at $239.2 million, only behind Ohio State, who had $251.6 million. Now, the Longhorns are thought to have at least a dozen players making at least $1 million for this upcoming football season. Ohio State in 2024, according to Ross Bjork, who told the Columbus Dispatch and Yahoo Sports last summer that they spent $20 million on their roster. The Grove Collective over in Oxford for the Ole Miss, they spent, it was reported, $10 million on just their transfer portal guys last year on their roster. And we know that Texas Tech has spent $10 million in the December portal window. Big old guy sold his business to somebody, and he decided, I'm going to buy football players legally as opposed to illegally. They spent $10 million at Texas Tech. So my question is, oh, and by the way, Auburn, Chris Lowe reported that Auburn is going to go north of $20 million on their roster this year. What is the scuttlebutt in Tuscaloosa? What do you know the number they spent last year, a roundabout for their roster? Is it going up this year? Where would Alabama fit in that whole conversation of north of $20 million?
So the important part is to separate the 3 years. So there's last year, there's this year, and there's going to be next year. And those are 3 different numbers for everybody. And so I think that's where people get a little bit, I don't say misled, but it's not always apples to apples.
For example, the Texas situation. When you see the number $35 to $40 million, you're automatically thinking, well, I just read that Auburn is going to spend $20 million. So you mean to tell me that Texas is going to spend double what one of the upper echelon SEC teams is going to spend?
Right. So you have last year, you just had NIL. And really, when we say NIL, we don't mean business deals, or we don't mean
that's Ohio State's $20 million number.
Right. Exactly.
That's for last year, what the roster cost.
That's the money that the collective brings in from grassroots donors, from businesses, whatever. They make the deals with players. That's essentially what their salary has been. And there's no limit to that, which is why you had schools in the higher end. I don't think Alabama was at $20 million. I think it was probably north of $10 million. Somewhere in that range is where I'd assume Alabama was last year. This year, you have both, because you have NIL deals, as we've known them, which are unregulated essentially, up until the House settlement is finalized. That has not happened yet. It could happen any day now, as long as they get this whole thing about roster limits squared away.
Right.
Once the House settlement happens, those NIL deals are not going to be able to be processed as easily, because you're going to have a clearinghouse, and there's a lot more stringent rules. And so schools have raced to get as much money in that vehicle, that manner, before the deadline, which is why Texas
before they
has
get
spent
regulated
a ton. Right. And Alabama certainly has spent, I think much of their money has been spent on retaining their roster more than has been bringing players in. I think that's generally been their philosophy, but it's not the number that Texas has spent. But that's just the NIL part of it. Then you're adding the $20 million in revenue sharing, that begins with the House settlement in July. And so this year and this year alone, you're able to combine those two, which is why some of those numbers are sky high, 40 million. Next year, 2026, everybody's going to be on the same playing field in theory, where it's 20 million in revenue sharing. Anything above that is NIL, but it's much more heavily regulated, and it's supposed to be scrutinized so that it's market value marketing deals, that this business is paying you a certain amount of money to do this marketing role for you. And
because the clearinghouse, literally, if Mike Rodak was being paid by Pat Smith Plumbing,
right,
and it goes to the clearinghouse, and let's say that I am paying you X amount, and the clearinghouse comes back and go, hold on a second.
Right. Yeah, Pat Smith Plumbing is a big booster, and I'm paying you $2 million to go sign autographs for 10 minutes. And you're like, no, that's not market rate.
The clearinghouse will say,
right.
And then now my question is this: how could you limit what a player potentially could make? When will the lawsuits start? When that clearinghouse says Mike Rodak,
there will be lawsuits, but I think they're betting on this legal precedent being set by the settlement to have some sort of value.
Gotcha.
That the NCAA and the two prominent attorneys that are,
it becomes case law. So if anybody wants to fight that, they're just going to cite the Judge Wilkin ruling,
right? And
then that will just be swatted away.
Yeah, it may. Well, and I think the NCAA would hope it would be swatted away, but there could be antitrust grounds, and that's kind of where the whole federal legislation. We saw Tuberville, meeting with Trump last night. They want federal legislation to standardize the rules, but essentially to protect the NCAA against antitrust lawsuits. So again, it's three different numbers. Last year was just NIL. This year, 2025 is NIL plus rev share. 2026 is just rev share. Alabama is not at the top in any of those 3 years. Where the exact number was, again, it's somewhere, I'd say, over 10 million last year. This year, you add to 20 million, you're probably, at least 25 million this year. I mean, that's probably still where Alabama's number is. You're paying your football team at Alabama of that 20 million is getting a large percentage, as it should be in any SEC school. You're probably getting 16 million out of there. And then whatever NIL money you've paid to retain these players, all those players who stayed through the portal periods, you add that on top. But then next year, it's just 20 million. But that's going to grow over time. So that's just like the NFL. That's based on a percentage of overall revenue. And so if you have these TV deals that get redone over time and your revenue coming in to college football is higher, that percentage that goes to the players.
So this would be the lowest amount that you could see in regards to what these players would be able to be a part of, because it's all based on the revenue.
Right. And it's just half of it, because the other half of it is scholarship money and whatever, aid money that they're getting. And so the whole idea is that combined revenue sharing salary, if you will, plus your scholarship, players are basically getting 50% of the pot, which is essentially what the NFL does with their players. And their players union is they negotiated roughly 50% goes to the players, 50% goes to the owners. And I don't think that's a mistake, because the two attorneys, Steve Berman and Jeffrey Kessler, who are not prosecuting, but they're the plaintiffs in this civil case, they were also the ones who, Kessler was at least 30 years ago, brought about NFL free agency with their lawsuits way back then. So it's the same general thinking that was behind this time, and in each case they come away with a decent amount of money themselves, hundreds of millions of dollars. I think is the legal fees.
That is Mike Rodak from Bama 247. 30 more minutes to go on the show. We'll take you up to the Paul Feinbaum Show. This is Jocks 94.5. It is 1:35, Jocks 94.5. You know, we've got spring storms in the area this afternoon and tonight, and you need to think about your roof. Seriously, it's amazing what kind of damage can happen up there. You can't see it on the ground, so that's where the great team at Abide Roofing is ready to help you. Travis Lloyd and his local roofing team, they're absolute pros, and they're offering something tremendous right now. A free roof inspection. That's right. No strings attached, no pressure. They just want to give you an honest look at what's going on up on top of your roof, on top of your house. So call them today, 205-922-7134, abideroof.com. That is the website. They helped me get a brand new roof on my house, and I had to go through my insurance company, and Travis Lloyd was on my roof for over 2 hours with my insurance adjuster. He's going to go not only the extra mile for me, but for you and for anybody else that calls Abide Roofing, 205-922-7134. They're licensed, bonded, insured. Great deal. They really take pride in their work. Jason Standridge and the fine team there with Travis Lloyd, they just do a tremendous job. Call them today, 205-922-7134 or abideroof.com. Mike is going to be so fortunate. He's going to get to participate on what we call Pat Ponders. Brought to you by Courtesy GMC in Trussville. Goodbye this weekend. Check out their great inventory of brand new GMCs and pre-owned inventory. Best in Central Alabama. Go to their website, courtesybirmingham.com. All right, question number one for Mike and Molly on this Monday. Wasn't that a TV show?
I was about to say that was a TV show.
Was
Mike
it?
and Molly?
Or was it something?
It was like a spinoff of one of those other sitcoms.
It sounds like
Was it Melissa McCarthy?
Yeah, that
Was she
sounds
the one
right.
in it?
Yeah, Mike and Molly.
Yeah. Look at that. So
I knew
fun.
it sounded familiar.
I'm surprised you're old enough to remember that.
No, she's really not. She doesn't watch TV.
It was from
and goes to the-
2010.
I really don't watch TV.
2010. So
That was back in your Boston days.
yeah, what, you were 9?
Yeah. 9, 10. Yeah.
Yeah, her and Jordan were
We were the same age.
like classmates.
Melissa McCarthy.
I am 6 months older than her. So
All right, question number one. So we all consider Nick Saban the greatest coach in college football history. What other sport, if any, do you think he could have coached an Alabama team to a conference championship? What other sport?
Basketball. I think he likes basketball. I think he knows basketball. I think you can get players to play hard in basketball and win games. And you can recruit. So, yeah, I mean, basketball, but
Men's
I don't know if
basketball.
I'd stop.
Men's or women's basketball? Or both?
I'd say men's just because women's is so dominated by a couple different teams. I feel like there's more opportunity in men's.
Okay.
But I don't know if I'd stop there because I think he's just naturally a good motivator. and
He's
leader.
a Yankees fan. Could he, how about baseball?
Well, that's
Could
a negative for him. being
is
a Red
this
Sox
cheating
fan.
or can I say golf?
No, it's not cheating.
Okay, good. Because I know he golfs a lot in his
He
free
does.
time. Yeah. And I've heard he's a pretty good golfer.
Yeah, and he's close with Justin Thomas
Exactly.
and some guys like that.
Mhm.
So I could see that as well.
So multiple sports,
Yeah.
you think?
I think so.
I mean,
think he could.
seriously, like if they
Yeah.
announce tomorrow, or let's say 5 years ago, if
Mhm.
they say I'm stepping away from college football and I am now going to take over for Avery Johnson as the head coach of the Alabama men's basketball team, there's a chance he could win the SEC.
I think he would know how to hire the right people. He would know how to motivate
The
his
organization would be there.
Yeah.
team. Right. I don't think you necessarily need to know all the X's and O's and how to run a set out
Yeah,
of
he's got
bounds.
people for that.
Right. I think you just find the right people for it. And I think he's such a good CEO like that. Granted, he's I'll say he's a micromanager. He has his hands in everything. Like, I think he could still find a way to make it happen with basketball.
All right, question number 2. Which of these two do you consider the worst alternative sports league? Is it the first version of the XFL or Live Golf?
Live. I think there's much more money involved with Live.
Yeah.
I mean, XFL, I think they obviously had money behind it, but Live is just a whole new level. Like, they went out and they got the best players in the world, or at least a decent amount of them. And it's not like the XFL was going out and getting NFL players to come and be part of their league. So I think, what was the question, failure? Or is that the
worst alternative sports
worst
league?
alternative? Yeah, I think worst because it hasn't become what people behind it wanted it to become.
And
Is this for the
PGA
live?
is what?
Is this for the live?
Yeah, for
Okay.
live. And I think PGA is fine without them. Their ratings for the Masters were great. So yeah, worst.
See, I was thinking live too, and a lot of it has to do with the money. And I feel like me personally, and not just because I am more football minded than I am golf, but I'll watch a lot more of the XFL and the USFL than I ever have the live. I don't
Yeah.
think I've actually sat down and watched a live
But
tournament.
it's tough to find live.
It's
Yeah,
very tough, right?
And they're competitors. I mean, live
Yeah.
and PGA are technically competing. You know, I guess they're coming together, but
Mhm.
it's not like the XFL
Yeah.
is directly competing with the NFL
No.
because they're a spring league. But
Yeah.
I haven't watched a second of live golf in my life.
I haven't either.
I don't think I'm alone in that either.
Based on the ratings. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Question number 3. Speaking of live, do you think the PGA Tour and tennis should allow the fans to be as rambunctious during play like live golf?
It depends. You can't do that at Augusta because
But you can do it at Waste Management.
Right, exactly. So I think the PGA does a good job of letting it happen
Organically.
Right, where it can happen. Like the appeal of Augusta is what it is. Like
Mhm.
it's exclusive. It's you can't have your phone. You get a $2 pimento cheese sandwich. Like it's become what it's become. And it hasn't
Exclusive
changed.
merchandise.
Right. Whereas the appeal of going to Phoenix for the Waste Management is you get drunk and you yell and you scream and you
Right.
throw beer cans on the green and whatever else happens there. I don't even know. But it's like a Bills game, basically. Like you don't want to be the one cleaning up
It's a
the
good
parking lot because
comparison.
it's just
Yeah.
hazardous waste. But that's what and those are cool moments in golf. I think back to like Phil Mickelson.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Was it the PGA? I think that was that year, and the fans just like broke through the lines and they
Mhm.
were walking with him, or
Yes.
Tiger at East Lake,
Yep.
walking behind him on the green. Like those are memorable moments in golf. And if everything is just stuffy and buttoned up, then that's not good either. But I think it has to be at Augusta.
See, I think there's a time and a place for it. Obviously, at a place like Augusta or a Torrey Pines or a TPC Sawgrass, you wouldn't have your, I don't want to say you wouldn't have your Waste Management crowd because there are golf fans that I'm sure have attended both and have enjoyed both. But there's a time and a place for the more buttoned up and then your Phoenix Open sort of party scene. And I guess tennis, you could maybe implement the same thing, but I guess it's just so much harder with the tennis court because it's so much more intimate and everyone's just there. So, I mean, it'll never happen at the Wimbledon. Probably not the Aussie Open, the French Open.
Definitely
any of
not
them.
French Open.
I'm
No.
surprised PGA hasn't done more of that because like sports marketing is all about selling experiences.
Right.
Imagine what you could get to have somebody walk with Tiger Woods, or not that he plays
Yeah.
anymore, but like walk
Right.
with
Inside the ropes.
with
type
Scotty
stuff.
Scheffler
Yeah.
in a tournament.
All right, question number 4. 43 years ago today, the Weather Channel made its debut on cable television. Where do you get your daily weather forecasts?
So it was actually a topic of conversation with my wife last night
Oh,
because we were talking about the storms coming this afternoon. My son has swim lessons tonight, and I was trying to plan ahead. And I was trying to say,
Right.
hey, like these might get canceled. We have a babysitter coming,
mhm.
so I can bring him to swim lessons, and she's working. And she's just like, you're obsessed with the weather. She's like, you need professional help for that. I'm like, I'm just trying to plan ahead and have a plan ready for
Sure.
tomorrow
Yeah.
if our thing gets canceled because there's a storm at 6:00 tonight. Anyway, I get my weather. I watch a lot of the James Spann morning videos. But
6 a.m. videos.
I've just gone
Yep.
directly to the source, and he uses a couple websites that have detailed maps that come out. So pivotalweather.com is one that I get. And I'm kind of a weather nerd like that. So I'll look at the HRRR.
Wow.
High
that's a good one.
resolution rapid
Yeah, but
refresh.
because that's big for the 6 hour, 6
Look
to
at
12
you.
hour.
See, I dropped that on my wife the other night. I said HRRR. And she's like, what the heck are you talking about?
It's the high resolution models right
rapid
there.
refresh.
That's
That's
right.
awesome.
See, I'm right there with you.
Yeah.
Helped run a ballpark for a number of years. That the weather radar and
Oh, yeah. Was it Radar Scope is the app on my phone, which
Yep.
is a very popular one among the enthusiasts. So I get a lot of weather information from a lot of different places. But
yeah, I was umpiring last night, and you know what I had?
there you go.
See,
Radar Scope.
that's
There you
right.
go.
See,
I have the Pro one.
oh, you pay for it.
I think I paid
Wow.
once, like it was $20 or whatever, one time.
Look at you.
That's awesome.
I didn't pay for mine.
Well,
That's why.
Some of us are more obsessed than others, apparently.
I guess so. Where do you get your weather, Molly?
See, when I'm waking up every morning and I'm like, oh, what do I need to wear to work today? I'll just check my Apple weather because I have the little widget. And I'll kind of check, okay, it'll be this temp when I go to work, this temp when I leave. So that's why I always bring a sweatshirt and I get cold in here. But if I'm traveling, like I'm leaving to go to Huntsville and I know we're getting storms, then I have the Weather Channel app that I'll use for the radar and kind of track it as, around this time, where will I be to try to dodge it. So I go back and forth between Apple and Weather Channel.
43 years ago. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
I remember watching the local Weather on the 8s at my grandparents' house with the little music in the background.
The music is iconic.
Oh, yeah. But then they would have the severe storm, beep, beep, beep thing
across
come on,
the bottom of the screen.
That always scared me as a kid.
Yeah. So you were watching the Weather Channel at your grandparents' house while Landrum was watching Golden Girls.
Well, my mom used to watch Golden Girls.
There you go. All right, fifth and final question of the week. BB, one of our great listeners, she's the first lady of our social taco, and I think you've met BB. Yeah. They're on site. She presented me with this question that I will ask you guys to give me an answer. You just won an all-expense-paid trip to a dude ranch.
Oh, yeah.
The trip includes personal lessons for a real ranch experience that you will compete in with other ranchers at the end of the week. Which one of these activities would you choose? I'm going to give you option of 4. Steer roping, barrel racing, target shooting, or axe throwing. Which one of the 4 would you take for a competition at the end of the week against other ranchers at a dude ranch?
Ooh.
Steer roping, barrel racing, target shooting.
I might be 0
throwing.
for 4. I've done a little bit of shooting going back to Boy Scouts. That was probably 20 years ago. But I hit a clay pigeon. I have that memory of, it was like a 24 gauge shotgun hitting a clay pigeon.
Oh.
I have never thrown an axe. I've driven by places that have axe throwing. I feel like if they serve alcohol and have axes, that's probably not a great combination.
Valid point.
I've never roped a steer, and I have never done the other barrel
racing.
I've done like potato sack racing at like a field day at school.
Oh, a picnic or something.
Yeah. But I'll go with shooting. Just because that's the only one I've actually done.
Okay. How about you, Molly?
See, I have terrible aim. I have tried shooting. I missed every single target, like way off. So I'd probably have to go with barrel racing because the rest of them, there's just no way.
No axe throwing. Have you thrown an axe?
I have. I've been to an axe throwing place in college, and it was fun. It's kind of hard, though.
Did you drink while you threw axes?
Maybe.
Yeah.
I will. Actually, it's funny you bring that up. It was actually for my friend's 21st birthday.
Was it really?
Yeah. We had a good time, though.
Even like a dartboard in a bar, if you're using real darts.
Right.
It could go wrong.
Yeah,
like, I'm not trying to be a worrywart, but dang, like that could go pretty bad.
Yeah. That is this week's Pat Ponders, brought to you by Courtesy GMC, and trustful. Visit their online inventory at courtesybirmingham.com. Our remaining few minutes with Mike Rodak, Bama 247. This is Jocks 94.5. I wonder if the Golden Girls is kind of like, what was it? I Love Lucy or Andy Griffith's show. It's some crazy stat to where somewhere in the world there's an episode of I Love Lucy or the Andy Griffith Show playing. Oh yeah. Like right now.
There probably is. I mean, somebody probably thinks it's live too.
This thing is streaming. This is wild. Right. This is looking crazy.
They got a new episode on, honey.
That is crazy. Mike Rodak, a couple more minutes. Appreciate Mike joining us the last 2 hours of the show. Conrad, Landrum, Molly, and myself will all be back on Monday. Quickly, you were telling me you did a radio interview in Seattle about Jalen Milroe. What's the confidence level from the folks in the Pacific Northwest that they got him a good one?
I think they want to be confident, or they want the hope.
They want that to work.
Right. Because like I was telling you earlier, the third round is there's going to be something off with the player.
Sure.
That's why they dropped to the third round. But there's usually something to work with there. That's typically what the third round is. So, they want it to work out. They saw Russell Wilson, I believe was a third round pick as well. And so there was essentially questions of like, can this guy be a franchise quarterback in Seattle like Russell Wilson was? And I was like, look, I think you need to maximize his strengths. Use him in the red zone as a runner. Use him in short yardage as a runner. But if you're expecting him to read NFL defenses and to slice them up and to win through the passing game, like, I don't think he showed that in the SEC. And I said to them, like, if you want a reason for optimism, go look at the Texas A&M game for him as a passer from 2 years ago, because that was probably his best game. If you want him as a runner, look at the two LSU games. But we just saw the Oklahoma game. We saw the Michigan game. We saw the Tennessee game. That's what we all remember.
All right. I have to ask you this in the remaining seconds. If Jalen Milroe would have come back, do you think that there would have been this mass exodus as reported in a couple of stories before the draft?
I mean, there already was at receiver. There was already 6 guys who left anyway, and that was DeBoer's point. So you're really looking at guys like Ryan Williams and Jeremy Bernard. I think it's probably more likely Jeremy Bernard would have been gone just because this is his last year, his last chance, and you want higher volume as a receiver. The running back situation is kind of the other part of that. You're talking about skill. The running backs didn't get a whole lot of carries because Jalen was taking
especially
the ball.
In the red zone.
Right. Yeah. It was Jalen design runs or it was option runs where Jalen held the ball. And so the opportunities weren't really there for Haynes and Jam and the other guys. And that's not Jalen's fault necessarily because he's such a good runner, but I think it would have affected that position as well. So I think there would have been other guys who would have left. And I think that's what Kalen said on the radio. He really focused on the word, not everybody would have left, not all. Right. But I think that
and in that interview, Kalen DeBoer pointed out the 6 that left.
Right.
So,
and it's just I think calling Jalen Milroe a ball hog is probably too strong, but there's some James Harden there where if it's going well, he's going to have the ball in his hands. And if he's doing the right things, you're going to win because of that. But he has the ball in his hands so much between the passing game and the running game that if it's not going well for him, like James Harden, it's not going to work out for the team. So that's the double-edged sword with him.
Mike Rodak, a great 2 hours, as it always is with Mike Rodak. You can follow his work at Bama 247 as the transfer portal never closes. It's always an interesting time. You can go and read all of his work there at Bama 247. Well, Mike, before you know it, we'll be hanging out in Atlanta and enjoying SEC Media Days.
Or at least one of us will.
Oh, boy. All right. That is today's program. We appreciate you tuning us in. Everybody stay safe. Be weather aware out there. Braves tonight, 6 o'clock after the Paul Feinbaum shows. They take on the Los Angeles Dodgers. For Conrad and Landrum in the Gulf of America, to Molly and myself here in Birmingham, have a great weekend. We'll see you Monday on 3 Man Front.